On the cold winter night of May 22nd, in the year of our Lord 2009, infamous director and Canadian Shawn Levy unknowingly changed the world forever by indirectly increasing the fruit juice content of Sunny D in the UK only up to 70%. He did this via the groundbreaking hit family comedy film, Night at the Museum 2, Battle of the Smithsonian. Night at the Museum 2 is a not terrible sequel to the first movie, Night at the Museum. We're back with Larry Daly, no longer a night guard, but a successful inventor and businessman. That is, until things go awry, as they oft do. This brings Larry to the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. The sequel is bigger, it's grander in all senses of the word, but it still holds the charm of the first one. It's still Night at the Museum, baby. It received the same mixed reviews as the first movie, and when you ask around, people either love or despise this movie. I, an intellectual, lie somewhere in between. Please don't take that seriously, I was joking. If you haven't seen my dissertation on the first movie, go ahead and check that one out first. Okay, now that you're caught up, you know the drill. Come further rot your brain with me as we take a deep dive into anything and everything Night at the Museum 2, Battle of the Smithsonian. And I mean everything. Just a few disclaimers before we jump into this, same as before. First, I am so aware this is a long video. I love talking about these movies, and this video is really for me, and there will be timestamps in the description to skip around as you please. Second, I am not a historian. I put even less effort into researching the historical figures in this movie than I did the last one. Please forgive my lack of knowledge. Second and a half, I'm wrong about things. I do my best to cover all of my bases, but sometimes I make bold claims. Say, for instance, that all of the movies came out in December, full well knowing that this one came out in May, and forgetting that in lieu of dramatic effect. I know it was December.
All the other ones are December.
Apologies. Third, I know museums are good and bad. Yay, history and learning. Boo colonialism, Eurocentrism, and stealing. I don't want to glorify museums or the figures within, I just really love these movies. I actually came across a quote by Dr. Monique Renee Scott, Director of Museum Studies at Bryn Mawr College. She said museums shouldn't simplify stories, we should complicate them. And I think that's very true, and it's a thought to keep in mind while watching these movies and just thinking about history in general. With all of that being said, let's get into an overly detailed synopsis of Night at the Museum 2, Empire Strikes Back. We open on the same 3D gold text that we all know and love from the first movie, but this time it's during the day, and it starts in Central Park, then moves to the museum, then moves to the museum exhibits being packed away, then ends in an eerie graveyard of crates. We cut to a commercial, which I always fast-forwarded through when it was on our DVR when I was younger because I thought it was a commercial, and then I would have to rewind. Every time.
You'll need a weapon, but first, you'll need a flashlight.
It's narrated by Larry, and he essentially says, what if this is your house? The power's out, your kids call for you, but how are you gonna find a flashlight? You're in the dark, I'll tell you how. And we zoom out to an infomercial for the glow-in-the-dark flashlight. It's a product Larry invented and is now gonna spend the next paid programming block talking to George Foreman about. He's the CEO of Daily Devices, a company that also created the super big dog bone and the unlosable key ring. George Foreman asks,
Isn't it true that just 2 years ago you were working as a night guard at some dusty museum?
And Larry enthusiastically confirms that that is true.
I was just a regular Joe with a flashlight and a dream.
You mean a regular Larry?
We cut to Larry walking out, and Ed, played by Ed Helms, rushes in to tell him that they got the Walmart meeting, and Larry's like, yay. He's clearly just busy and overworked. He has his driver drop him off at the Museum of Natural History for one of his monthly nostalgia tours, as Dr. McPhee calls them, though apparently he hasn't been there in a few months. There's a sign out front that says closed for renovation, and everything inside is packed all up into boxes. Larry asks what's going on, and McPhee says, progress. Oh, so they tell me. He turns on a Teddy Roosevelt hologram to demonstrate, explaining that they're replacing all of the old exhibits. McPhee tries to save face and act in charge.
Whose idea was this?
Me, of course. I'm in charge. Me and the board. Mainly the board.
But it's clear he's upset, like to the point that he can't even be weird or awkward. Say what you want about McPhee, but he really cares about the museum. Larry argues that people love this stuff, but McPhee says,
People, Mr. Daly, love what's next. You should know that. You left.
He said that they're going to the Federal Archives in the Smithsonian in D.C., and then they argue about Dexter, the capuchin monkey.
What are you you, the primate garbage police. Let it go, baby.
McPhee heads out for the night. The sun sets, the exhibits come to life, Larry plays tug-of-war with Rexy, and the exhibits bust out of their crates with the strength of 1,000 men. Can you believe I almost forgot my tablet earrings? They probably look like cheese from that distance, but I assure you they are tablets and I made them. Anyway, Teddy tries to talk to Larry, but almost immediately gets interrupted by Larry's cell phone going off.
Oh. Cricket.
Jedediah yells for help out of his crate, and as Larry lifts the lid, it's clear that all of the exhibits are resentful at him for leaving them. Larry says he doesn't know how this happened, and Jedediah's like,
Yeah, real mystery how this happened.
Maybe the answer's on that magic buzzing box there in your hand.
Larry assures them that he'll fix it, but Octavius says there's no fixing it at this point.
I can see that you're genuinely slightly bothered, but it's never going to be the same. All of us here together.
At the same time Teddy is trying to lift their spirits because it's their last night, Attila is glaring Larry down. At the end of the night, Larry helps everyone into their crates, and Dexter slams the crate lid on Larry's fingers. Twice. Larry notices that Teddy doesn't have a crate, and Teddy explains that some of the signature exhibits, such as Rexy and himself, are staying behind. With the tablet. Unbeknownst to the other exhibits.
Sometimes it's more noble to tell a small lie than deliver a painful truth.
Teddy assures Larry he'll be fine. Sometimes the greatest change brings about greater opportunity. I mean, Larry left this place and created quite a life for himself. He's a captain of industry. He should be jazzed. He's clearly not jazzed. As one last piece of advice, Teddy wants to offer the key to happiness to Larry, but once again gets interrupted by the cell phone. Larry motions for Teddy to hold, but the sun has risen and Teddy freezes. The next night, Larry's walking into his nice apartment with Nick, who's also upset that the exhibits are being shipped off. He's also upset because Larry's working again tonight, but Larry reminds him,
I used to work every night, remember?
That was like when you had the coolest job in the world.
The phone rings, so Larry answers it, and it's Jedediah, who says Dexter stole the tablet, and now they're being attacked by Kamen-Ra, Akhman-Ra's older brother, who is not a friendly, I repeat, not a friendly. There's sounds of battle in the background, and the phone call abruptly ends. The fact that somebody in the crate has Larry's phone number memorized. Larry drops Nikki off at Erica's. He arrives in DC the next morning and decides to start in the Air and Space Museum, where he runs into a tour guide played by Mindy Kaling.
Hi, excuse me, could you tell me how to get to the Federal Archives?
Of course, just be a historical document worthy of storing for all eternity. I'm kidding.
He's not a document.
He walks around a bunch of different museums, and we get sneak peeks at certain exhibits that may or may not maybe might come to life later, wink wink. Eventually he finds the Gate of Kamen-Ra, but as he leans in, a guard played by Jonah Hill yells at him not to touch it. And this moment, this bit, is perhaps the longest bit in the Night at the Museum franchise, clocking in at a whopping 2 minutes and 50 seconds where they argue about absolutely nothing. And it is so goddamn funny.
Oh, so you're threatening me? You're threatening me, Brandon?
It's Brundon.
Excuse me?
Brundon.
Brundon.
Pro Rundon.
They compare flashlights, and the way Larry disarms Brundon and then empties his flashlight batteries like he's unloading a gun. God tier. I think director Sean Levy and screenwriters Thomas Lennon and Robert Ben Garant put it best. Larry is the Jedi Knight of Night Guards. He's had the training and experience and confidence, and he can do things with a flashlight that nobody else can. The whole point of that scene was for Larry to steal Brundon's badge so that he can use it to access the Federal Archives and other areas. He uses this badge maybe twice. He tries to call Nikki for directions underground, but his phone loses service, so he has to improvise. He finds guard uniforms, so he puts one on, looking incredibly snazzy, and then he uses his badge to access the area where the exhibits are stored. We once again get a sneak peek of things that may or may not probably will come to life later, including a giant octopus that tumbles out of a crate Larry opened. It's a pretty creepy vibe, especially when Larry happens upon his friends who are trapped and frozen in the crate with Kamen-Ra and his army pointing spears at them. Larry uses a spear to grab the tablet from within the crate, but it is too late. The sun has set, the tablet glows, and everything comes to life. We meet our villain.
I'm sorry, who are you?
I am Kamen-Ra, the great king of the great kings, and from the darkest depths of ancient history, I have come back to life!
Uh-huh.
Larry's obviously not phased in any way, so Kamen-Ra's like, who is this guy? Larry brings up Akhman-Ra, which is not a good move because Kamen-Ra is jealous and resentful of Akhman-Ra for getting everything growing up, including the throne. He demands the tablet from Larry so that he can unlock the gate to the underworld, and despite the New York exhibits urging him not to, Larry just hands over the tablet immediately. But oh, don't you worry. No matter how much he's changed, he's still Larry Daly. He's always got a plan. He's like, oh no, because I just thought you wanted the cube.
The cube of Rubik.
All right. What is this cube of Rubik?
It's the cube that turns all who oppose you to dust. That one?
Larry leads Kamen-Ra and his army to a large crate. When he opens it, the giant octopus bursts out and starts attacking everyone. Larry takes the opportunity to grab the tablet and run away, and a typical chase scene ensues. But as Larry runs by all these bags and crates, you can faintly hear these exhibits like pleading to be let out, which like, yikes. Throwback to Akhman-Ra. Out of nowhere, General George A. Custer, played by Bill Hader, flies in on his motorcycle and tells Larry to take the wheel. We instantly learn that he's stupid and overconfident as he stands up in the sidecar and gets hit by a beam, knocking him to the ground. Larry almost rams into a woman who introduces herself as Amelia Earhart, played by Amy Adams. And she has the silliest 1930s Katharine Hepburn transatlantic accent that makes all of her lines so fun to listen to.
And now if you'd wipe that perhaps permanent look of alarm off your kisser, I was wondering if you might be so kind as to tell me exactly where I am.
Larry tries to deter her because he's in a dangerous situation, but she insists on following him because she wants to have an adventure. We cut to General Custer, who's brushing his hair because, as we all know, femininity is silly, and he's stuck in the crate with all of the New York exhibits. He announces his plan.
On the third bugle blast, I shall loudly announce attack! At which point, we will all jump out of this box and attack.
Sacagawea raises her hand, and in a way that I can't tell if the joke is racist.
You, Sacagawea.
That is not my name.
Sacagawea.
No.
Sack in a box.
No.
Custer struggles to pronounce her name. She politely tells him that his plan is stupid, so he sits down to rethink. We cut back to Larry and Amelia, who are strolling through the portrait gallery. Larry gets decked with a tiny snowball, and he turns around to see that it came from a painting which has come to life. In fact, all of the paintings have come to life, and it's cool as fuck. The Egyptians catch up with them, so Larry quickly swaps the tablet with a pitchfork from American Gothic. When trying to spear the Egyptians fails, Larry and Amelia dive into VJ Day in Times Square, the photograph of the sailor kissing the nurse from World War II. Larry somehow gets a call from Nikki, despite literally losing connection in a stairwell, but a guy bumps into him and Larry drops his phone. The guy asks what his problem is, and Larry vaguely explains the situation, and the guy's pretty mad.
Hey, fellas! These so-and-sos are trying to rough up my pal here just because he's from Brooklyn.
Yeah, thank you!
You got it!
After Larry leaves, the guy calls after him, saying,
Hey, mister! You forgot your, What the heck is this thing?
Larry steps in to kiss the nurse to avoid the notice of the Egyptians before Amelia drags him out. They flip the painting around to face the wall, and the Egyptians cannot escape. Larry tries to deter Amelia again, but she says,
I want to help you, and not because I like you, which so far I don't, but because I smell adventure. And damn it, I want in.
We cut to Kamen-Ra trying to recruit other evil people from the museum to help him in his quest to conquer the world. Ivan the Terrible, Napoleon Bonaparte, and young Al Capone. He explains that he wants Larry Daly and the tablet of Akhman-Ra brought to him, then asks if there are any questions. Insert a long bit about Kamen-Ra's dress that is not actually a dress but a tunic.
This, dress you're wearing, do we have to wear one of these too?
No, of course. You're not listening. I just told Mr. Capone here that this is not a dress. It is, in fact, a tunic.
Ivan then insists that the correct translation of his name is Ivan the Awesome. We cut back to Larry and Amelia again. Amelia says, We'll get you back to your chums, Mr. Daly.
You won't get lost following Amelia Earhart.
She flirts with him a little bit before three cherubs enter, played by the Jonas Brothers. They sing, then rap, More Than a Woman.
Yeah, she's more than a woman. Yeah.
And Larry tells them to shut up because there's literally a French army right there. Unfortunately, they run into Napoleon and his guards, and I really don't even know where to begin with this bit. They argue about height, of course. Napoleon flirts with Amelia, who he has a crush on, and is like, no, if your boyfriend would kindly come with me, She tells him they're not dating, and Napoleon says the funniest thing in the whole movie.
Were you guys like friends in college and just afraid now to both ruin your relationship by telling the other person that you want to be more than friends, that you like each other?
Larry's like, I'm sorry, one more time? And then he repeats it exactly, and this whole thing is a long bit, and I die. Back in the crate, Jedediah tells Octavius they need to escape and help Gigantor. They do a quick little chest bump and then climb out of a vaguely yet suspiciously heart-shaped rust hole. Unfortunately, Al Capone's crony spots them and Jedediah tells Octavius to run. Octavius doesn't want to leave Jedediah, but eventually he does. Jedediah trembles and assures himself he'll be fine as we see a giant shadow start to fall over him. Meanwhile, Common Raw's sitting on Archie Bunker's chair on top of a pile of loot, or so the Smithsonian calls it. He's examining Dorothy's ruby slippers when a crony brings in a birdcage with Jedediah in it. Common Raw's like, what damage could they possibly do? They're so cute.
Now hold it a second. Now you have a right to keep me as your captive, torture me even, but don't call me cute. I ain't cute.
Octavius is watching from the window ledge and he says,
Stay alive! I will find you!
Before he jumps off the ledge to go find help. Larry is escorted in by the French. Common Raw takes the tablet and puts it in the gate to unlock a portal to the underworld, but nothing happens.
I'm afraid that Mother and Father may have slightly changed the combination on me.
Larry's like, damn, that's gotta be frustrating. You'll be frozen come morning, but I've got all night. And Common Raw's like, oh, really? Well, he doesn't, and points to Jedediah in the cage. Common Raw grabs Jedediah, who's freaking out about being manhandled, and drops him in an hourglass. Larry has 1 hour to find the combination. Larry and Amelia run off and straight into the octopus from earlier. Thinking fast, Larry grabs a painting off the wall and swings it so that the water from within the painting splashes onto the octopus. The octopus is happy. It gives Larry a hug. They then run into a bust of Teddy Roosevelt, who asks Larry to scratch his nose. He does. It's weird.
That's exquisite. Oh, a little over there. Yes. Oh.
More?
Oh, yes. Oh, that's... Ooh.
And then they explain that they know a Teddy Roosevelt from New York, which makes this Teddy insanely jealous. Larry asks for help translating the tablet, and Teddy does. It says you will find the combination you seek if you figure out the secret at the heart of Pharaoh's tomb. They ask what that means, and Teddy's like, what do I look like, the f***ing Sphinx?
What's this? What's that? Why'd you ask New York, Teddy? Sure, he'd love to get his grabby little fingers all over that thing. Probably let his horse lick it, too.
Amelia has an idea, so she takes Larry to the Thinker, but she gets distracted by a Degas ballerina along the way. They reach the Thinker, who, thinks about it.
Thinking.
It's not happening with him.
Which is such a clever little character trait. Like, he never finishes a thought because he's always thinking. Genius. Now, you remember the Dum Dum Give Me Gum Gum bit?
Dum Dum.
Remember how that was the thing that shaped a generation? Well, for my generation, it was this guy. You could not go 1 hour without hearing one of us little gremlins spout this life-changing, brain chemistry-altering phrase.
Boom! Bang! Firepower!
So you know what that means. But really, people misquote this all the time. Everyone always says boom, boom, firepower, including Sean Levy himself in the director's commentary where he talks about what a cultural phenomena it was, but no. That's not it. Now, in the trailer, it's boom, boom.
Boom, boom, firepower.
Which means in a different cut of the scene, it was boom, boom. So Sean Levy gets a pass, but go ahead and give the movie a listen for me. 'Tis boom bang, I assure you. Although, maybe the theatrical release had boom boom, I don't know. Anyway, Amelia makes an offhand comment that he's certainly no Einstein, which gives Larry an idea. Then there's this weird moment where Amelia says she feels like she's been asleep for a really long time and now suddenly feels awake. So Larry tries to explain, but she stops him, then slaps him, then kisses him, then shushes him, then kisses him again. This is accompanied by the Jonas Brothers Cherubs singing My Heart Will Go On.
Oh, great, you're back. Okay.
This isn't important, but we cut back to the exterior of the crate with the New York exhibits who are making a lot of commotion from within. We then get the best line reading of anyone who has ever lived. One of Al Capone's cronies says,
"What did I tell you? Enough!"
Everyone urged me not to say this, but I cannot let it go unsaid. This man put his whole Al Capone into this line reading, and I stand by that. The villains are just kind of vibing when Ivan the Terrible brings in two guys who want to join the quest for world domination. Oscar the Grouch, and Darth Vader. Common Raw shoots them down, though, because unfortunately they're all full, and also they don't seem very evil.
You're evil, you're asthmatic, you're a robot. And what is the cape for? Are we going to the opera? I don't think so. Sorry.
Common Raw sees Larry and Amelia running outside, and he thinks they're trying to escape, so he sends everybody to kill them. Meanwhile, Octavius is trying to recruit help, that help supposedly being the President of the United States. How he got to the White House, I'm not sure. He says,
They say a good man rules this union.
and this movie came out in 2009, so I wasn't sure what president they were talking about, or even if they were talking about a specific president, but turns out Sean Levy wrote this line in after Obama was elected, so yay. Octavius charges across the White House lawn, and we get that bit where we're close in on him and then zoom out to a wide shot of literally nothing happening and then back and forth and so on. A massive squirrel, relatively, sneaks up behind Octavius and he says,
Remain absolutely still.
Very still.
Vision's based on movement.
by the way, his neck does not snap because his helmet is insanely strong. I don't want to hear anything about it. Larry and Amelia hide in the Lincoln Memorial to wait out the bad guys. She asks about his career guarding antiquities, but he tells her that he quit that to go into product design. She's impressed, like, oh my god, you're an inventor, like the airplane. And he's like, yeah, no, but smaller scale stuff. She asks why he does that stuff, though, if he doesn't even enjoy it. And he's like, what? No, I literally just said I like it.
I know what you said, Mr. Daly, but what I see in front of me is a man who's lost his moxie.
They get interrupted by the giant Abraham Lincoln waking up, swatting at pigeons.
Oh, blast these pigeons and their incessant cooing.
They try to stop him from walking outside, but he plucks Larry off the ground the same way Larry does to Jedediah. How does it feel, Larry? Huh? Not so great, hmm? Amelia urges Lincoln to sit back down and freeze, and he does. Lincoln calls them an adorable couple, but they insist they are not a couple.
We're not, we're not, blah, blah, blah. I never lie.
The duo eventually makes it to the Air and Space Museum, where Amelia absolutely loses her mind at all of the planes and rockets. They run into the Tuskegee Airmen.
Just live in the moment.
The Tuskegee Airmen are living in the moment.
Who thank Amelia for paving the way. They challenge her to a foot race, but Larry won't let them. Everything is extremely chaotic as all of the planes and rockets start to fire up so that they can take off, which Larry quickly shuts down.
We are in a no-fly, no-go phase. That is a November Gorgon phase of non-flying.
And yes, even the little planes have little people in them. They do not fly themselves. I checked. He briefly runs into Abel the space monkey, who's incredibly polite, much to everyone's surprise. They find the Einstein bobbleheads, and Larry poses the tablet question to them. The secret at the heart of Pharaoh's tomb, they say, is pi.
3.14159265 to be exact.
Larry cannot remember the number, and this was absolutely going to be a long bit if Amelia didn't cut in and save us, saying she's got it. Also, this happens.
That's the way, we like it,
Back on Custer, who has a new, revised plan.
I will loudly announce that we are not going to attack. What's the amazing Custer about to say now? Oh, I hope he's my friend. BAM! We attack!
Back on Common Raw, who's like,
Didn't expect your friend to run off like that now, did you?
And I'm not sure if he's referring to Larry or Octavius or both, but either way, Jedediah is confident that his friends will pull through. We do see a slip in this confident facade, though, because he is afraid. Amelia's once again flirting with Larry, suggesting maybe they're more than a team. Larry tries to explain why that wouldn't work, but he doesn't have the heart to tell her what she is or what's going to happen. Ivan, Napoleon, and Al Capone catch up with them, but they get the Tuskegee Airmen to hold the bad guys back while they board the Wright Flyer, the first plane ever flown. A wire gets jammed and Amelia has to fix it, so she hands over the stick to Larry, who is not thrilled about having to fly a plane. Amelia knows he's got moxie, but moxie doesn't fly planes. They make it outside with the help of Abel, and then there's the most gorgeous, breathtaking romantic shot of them flying over the National Mall together. No words, just vibes. And the vibes? Excellent. Common Raw is still sitting on his pile of loot, getting more and more nervous by the minute. He hears a funny sound just as the Wright Flyer smashes through the glass behind him and crashes into a wall. Larry rolls out to check on Amelia, but Common Raw stops him. Amelia goes to recruit backup, and Common Raw demands that Larry hand over the tablet and tell him the combination. Larry won't hand it over until Common Raw hands Jed over. This bit is 2 minutes long and absolutely pointless and so hilarious.
This is a no-touching zone.
Good. Well then...
Oh my God! I can't believe you reached across like that again. I can't even believe it. Oh, God, I want to kill you, right? If you didn't know this combination, you'd be so dead right now. It would be unbelievable.
I also imagine Jedediah's inner dialogue during this scene to be something along the lines of, oh, my life is in the hands of literal children right now. I am going to die. The bit is interrupted by Al Capone, who's holding an Einstein that he tortured to get the combination. Satisfied, Common Raw lazily throws the hourglass and takes the tablet from Larry. Larry catches the hourglass before it hits the ground, and Common Raw sticks the tablet in the gate and begins chanting.
Kalama, mas kama.
Larry apologizes to Jedediah for not being around the past couple of years, but Jedediah reassures him. They didn't call Larry because they needed his help. They called because Larry needed them.
That fancy suit you've been parading around in these past couple of years, there's a hanging suit. Oh, gussied up but dead inside. That ain't you.
The gate opens and the bird warrior's horse emerge from within. Common Raw's first order is to have them send Larry Daly to his doom. Just then, Octavius comes riding up on the back of nature's most fearsome creature, the squirrel.
Do you wish to surrender honorably? Or must this end with the spilling of your blood?
Common Raw laughs it off like this is your backup, but that's not the backup. The backup is the giant Abraham Lincoln smashing through the glass wall. He absolutely demolishes the bird warriors, or as he calls them, half pigeons. The warriors that remain retreat back into the underworld. Before Abe leaves, he reminds Larry that a house divided against itself cannot stand. Common Raw orders the rest of his party to kill Larry, but just then a bugle blast sounds. We pan over to see Custer, Amelia, the New York Company, and all of our other allies we met along the way.
We are not going to attack, right? No!
A battle commences, causing Larry to drop the hourglass. He tries to run after it, but Octavius assures him he's got it. Larry finds Custer hiding, who insists he's a screw-up, citing the Battle of Little Bighorn. He's remembered for his biggest failure. He can't do this. But Larry says, this moment, this night is what you'll be remembered for. These people need a leader, and Custer's gotta do it. And we get a little slow-mo pan over all of the good guys losing, and it's very dramatic and sad. And wait a minute, are they pointing a f***ing gun at the monkey? Custer's spirits are lifted, and he rushes out into battle only to get hit and fall over. Larry happens upon both Dexter and Abel, who are arguing over Larry, because I guess the monkeys are saying real words now when they're making their monkey noises. They engage in a double slap fight. Back to our little gay men, Octavius runs up to the hourglass and puts his hand against the glass. Jedediah's prepared to die. Remember me as I was, wild and free, but Octavius won't let him die.
No need for final words.
Want to get to the story of our relationship, the evolution from enemy to friends.
No! Because you are going to live! Ah!
The glass shatters and Octavius hands Jedediah his sword. They march into battle and it's this awesome sequence of them destroying everyone's feet with their tiny swords, and it's an homage to 300, and yeah. The monkeys beat up an Al Capone crony cheered on by an Einstein. And then the monkeys hug. Cute, I guess. At least it's supposed to be. I'm being too cynical. Larry runs into Amelia and tells her his plan, then gets cornered by Ivan, Napoleon, and Al Capone. He says, okay, I'll just give it to the leader. So obviously they start arguing and they get so distracted that they forget about Larry and the tablet and the battle.
Why would you touch little Nippy?
Hey. I can handle this, okay?
Because, you know, a house divided cannot stand. Larry runs out only to be stopped by Common Raw's sword. Another super cool battle commences, Common Raw with his sword and Larry with his flashlight. Sean Levy says they staged it to look like the Vader and Luke fight from Return of the Jedi, and I just think that's so neat and it looks super cool. Plus, I could go on forever about how Larry fights with his flashlight, which is really not a weapon, but anyway. While they're fighting, Amelia opens the gate to the underworld. Larry backs Common Raw up to the gate.
What are you?
I'm the night guard.
Everyone celebrates. Evil is defeated. Jedediah and Octavius hug, but then quickly disengage because, you know, men. Amelia says,
I'd say somebody found his moxie.
And then Custer says,
The Battle of the Smithsonian. Perhaps the greatest battle the world will never know.
obviously I hate Custer, but this is just a really genuine, sweet moment that makes me smile. Larry says they need to get back, but Jedediah reminds him that they don't want them back anymore. Larry does though, so they are going back. He has Amelia give them a ride, and they pile out of the clown plane, when they land in New York. It's now high time that Larry tell Amelia what's going to happen at sunrise. But she knows. She's always known.
But it doesn't matter. You've given me the adventure of a lifetime in one night. Have fun.
She gives a thumbs up and flies off, and Jedediah pops out of Larry's pocket to say,
I don't know about you fellas, but this old cowboy just got to second base.
They notice she's flying towards Canada. You know, one last Amelia Earhart getting lost joke before she course corrects. Once they're inside, Teddy happily welcomes them back, but says that they can't hide in the basement forever. It's okay though. It's Larry. Of course he has a plan. Before the sun rises, Larry mentions the key to happiness thing that Teddy was talking about at the beginning of the movie. He's figured it out. It's doing what you love with people you love. Teddy's like,
Actually, I was going to say physical exercise, but the love thing's good too. Lawrence! Yeah. Welcome home, son.
which, like, Teddy doesn't actually really know that Larry's back for good yet. He doesn't know, but, like, he knows, you know? We cut to a Fox 5 News reporter outside the museum at night. She explains that the museum is reopening its doors after a bunch of renovations, and now it has new night hours. Inside the museum, there's patrons everywhere. McPhee asks Larry why he's back, and Larry says he sold his company. McPhee's like, some weird anonymous donor left a huge endowment, granted everything stays the same. And he briefly considers Larry, but quickly dismisses it. We then get to see the exhibits interacting with guests, and it's so cute. The Easter Island head is asking for Gum Gum, Attila's telling stories to kids, Achman Ra's explaining his tablet. A girl asks him what the tablet does, so he explains it honestly.
Actually, it has a magical power that brings all of the exhibits to life.
No, really, what's it do?
Nothing, it's just for decoration.
Rexy acts like an animatronic, and some teens make fun of him, saying he looks fake, so Rexy roars really loudly and they scream and run away. Classic. Actually though, Sean Levy mentioned that this sequence is kind of an FU to teens who look down on movies like this. And I don't know if that's true, but I support him. McPhee asks Larry if he's sticking around longer this time, and Larry says that he's gonna be around for a long time. McPhee expresses his happiness in the most McPhee way possible.
As night guards go, you're...
What, the best?
I'm starting to think Amelia's not the only one with a little baby crush on Larry. Suddenly, Larry spots a woman, but not just any woman, a woman who looks exactly like Amelia Earhart, just with longer hair and glasses, almost as if she's also played by Amy Adams. He approaches her and asks if she's related to Amelia Earhart, and she's like, I don't know, maybe. She's the woman who flew across the Pacific, right? And he corrects her, saying it was the Atlantic. He suggests that they check out the Hall of Miniatures, and she asks him to show her the way because she's always getting lost. Get it? I get that this scene is supposed to be romantic, but if you look at it, it's kind of creepy. I get it. We want Larry to have a love interest because God forbid he go without one. And we know him. We know he's a cool guy. But if that was me, I wouldn't not be on edge a little bit. Ultimately, this scene is not needed. If it were setting something up, maybe, but it leads to nowhere. I don't like it. Also, there's a caveman dancing in the background the whole time, and it's so funny to me. We yet again end the movie with another Earth, Wind, and Fire song. Let's groove. Jedediah and Octavius fly towards the camera in a plane, and blackout. Now, if you're me, you have a very distinct memory of watching the movie around the time the DVD came out, where Larry really does show the Amelia double, the Hall of Miniatures, and they're just vibing on the shelves.
I'm a vibe guy.
And I don't know what to say because I was so convinced this scene exists, and it does not. Breaking news, this is a mid-credits scene alert. Hey, remember the guy from the black and white photo who runs into Larry? Well, he's here, and he's tinkering with the phone Larry dropped. We hear his mother call to him in the background,
Joey Motorola, you get down here for supper, right?
Whatever, we covered this in the last video, like Motorola, like the cell phone company, implying Larry invented cell phones in whatever world this is. We close out on a Jonas Brothers song. How fitting. Moving on to the characters, we've got a ton of familiar faces and a ton of new ones too. Hey, remember when they made the first movie and then they said we want star power? Yeah, well they sure did double it for this one. First, we're gonna revisit our old friends who need revisiting, then we'll move on to the new guys, gender neutral.
Larry Daly. Daily Devices?
Larry Daly. Larry Daly. I know what you're going to say because I'm thinking it too. What happened to Larry's character? Now, it's really hard to keep his character separate from the central themes of this movie, but I'll try to keep it clear. Initially, this movie left me torn for a really long time because it felt contradictory, like they threw away all of Larry's character development from the first movie by having him become a successful inventor. Because after realizing that his dream of becoming a successful inventor is just a way to get people to see him as great, and that it really doesn't matter, he becomes a successful inventor. But if this really does make him happy, after all of the personal growth he's achieved, he wants this to be his life, why are we mad about it? It just feels like every which way you look at it, something is wrong with Larry's character, like something is not adding up. But I don't actually think that's the case. Let's do a quick recap, shall we? Movie 1, Larry can't hold a job. He's selfish and lazy a little bit. He can't lower himself to getting a survival job because he's built for something greater, something better than all of this. Because he loves his son though, he gets a job anyway at the Museum of Natural History as a night guard. He gives up really easily on the exhibits and is quick to anger until he learns compassion and he learns to be a great leader, father, and friend. He learns that greatness isn't necessarily inventing something amazing and being remembered isn't super important. Being a night guard is perfectly fine. It's better than fine. Through all of these events and personal growths, Larry becomes his own version of great. The end. Movie 2. We open on Larry as a big success. He's the CEO of his own company, Daily Devices. He's made a name for himself through his inventions, the super big dog bone, the unlosable keyring, the glow-in-the-dark flashlight. He's being interviewed by George Foreman.
That is true. 2-time world heavyweight champ George Foreman.
He's happy, but when he's not performing, when he's not being a face, he's stressed. He's short-tempered. We start to see some of the old Larry slip through.
Let's take a second to be happy about it. All right. Hey.
Or the expansion of this line when Larry's phone suddenly goes off in the novelization. He says, "That was our competitor outselling us because we wasted a second being happy." And maybe that's because inventing wasn't what he thought it would be. Like, the concept is cool, he's smart, he's creative, and has genuinely good ideas. Unfortunately, we live in capitalism, so there's the business side of it. And the business side is not fun. At all. I actually can't claim to know much about it, but Larry's up there in the world of product design, so I imagine the tediousness is unbearable. In the script, Larry's assistant is reading a magazine that's like, while the company continues to post impressive earnings, there are some who point to the fact that Daily has failed to launch a single new product in the past 2 years. One suspects, however, that given Daly's formidable track record, these 22 months have been spent quietly developing the next big thing. His assistant, Rose, tells him not to worry though, because he's running a business. That's real work. Youch. Larry initially does this stuff because he enjoys it. Maybe he can do it, maybe he can make it. But suddenly there's all of this pressure to create the next big thing. Whereas the source of this pressure in the first movie was internal, now it's external, which is 1,000 times worse. To have your inner self-loathing thoughts be confirmed by the outer world? Yikes. Sorry, to have overcome your inner self-loathing thoughts only for them to come right back when confirmed by the outer world.
Mega yikes.
We have to remember that personal growth is not linear. There are ups and downs and loop-de-loops, and sometimes it feels like you've made no progress at all, or maybe even negative progress. So yeah, Larry learns that he doesn't have to be the best inventor ever who invented the awesomest thing ever in the first movie, but like, theory only gets you so far. He had those far-fetched dreams for a long time, and maybe he was over them, but then to be presented with the opportunity to fulfill those dreams? Honestly, he'd be kind of dumb not to take the opportunity. And by taking it, he learns it's not for him. Larry could have been a night guard forever without exploring anything else, but then he would have lived his life wondering if he could have made it, which is fine, but now he knows. He won't have regrets or what ifs. He learns to channel his creativity elsewhere, somewhere not in the corporate world, somewhere that will help him and the people he's close to. I mean, we literally see his inventions come from the heart. They're reflective of his time at the museum. The unlosable keyring, the super big dog bone, the glow-in-the-dark flashlight. Larry always has his friends at the museum in his mind. Because yeah, we're seeing bits of the old Larry Daly that are less than desirable, but we're also seeing the bits that we love. He's always got a half-assed plan in his back pocket.
Nicholas, I have a very good, highly thought out plan.
You have no plan.
Yes, I have no plan.
He's excellent at bullshitting.
The cube of Rubik.
And he never stops caring. Like, he cares enough to learn. A lot. Remember back in the first movie when he's trying to make small talk with Rebecca and says, Teddy Roosevelt, he was our fourth president, right? Now look at this.
Theodore Roosevelt at your service.
26th president of the United States, Rough Rider, founder of the national parks, and a whole bunch of other stuff.
Have we met?
He remembers all of the little things about Amelia. He goes from, oh, you're this famous pilot, right? To listing off all of her achievements to her body double at the end of the movie. It's a little unconventional, but he always remembers the important things. Did he say the "a house divided" quote correctly?
You know, a house divided doesn't do well.
No. But he gets the point and its meaning, and he understands how it will help him and his friends. Larry gets so frustrated with Amelia, but no matter how much he wants to end the conversation of getting together by telling her that she's wax, he doesn't, because he doesn't want to ruin her last night of life.
Okay, you're made of...
Made of...
wonderful things. You're made of good, wonderful things.
Only when she's about to leave at the end does he tell her, because she has a right to know. The battle at the end of the movie is another example I want to bring up. Larry is never violent. Our hero, our protagonist, our man, never intentionally hurts anyone. Larry always tries talking first. Like I said, excellent and he uses that to get out of situations instead of other means, like the cube of Rubik, like twirling the pitchfork only in self-defense and not using it against the Egyptians, like being captured by Napoleon and trying to make Napoleon mad.
You're really hung up on the height, aren't you?
No, it's not about height, see.
Yes, you are. You're saying I'm a little mouse, you're a giant cat.
I'm the giant cat.
Like dividing the house.
Okay, sure, you can have it. Just tell me who the boss is and I'll give it to you. Or should I give it to Kamen Ra? He's sort of like your master, right?
Like using a flashlight in the fight against Kamen Ra. When Larry has no other choice but to fight back, despite the plentiful weapons left around on the ground, he chooses his flashlight. I would also like to bring up that in the script and novelization, when Capone brings in an Einstein, the Einstein says to Larry, I'm afraid in the timeless struggle between brains and brawn, brawn always wins. But Larry is living proof that that is not true. According to the script, he would visit the museum every single month, bringing the exhibits things from the outside world, and this is partially confirmed in the finished movie when McPhee says,
It's our very own Mr. Success Story. Come for one of your nostalgia tours? I haven't seen you for a few months.
And when Larry gives Rexy a rope to play with. He loves and cares about his friends so much that he's willing to help them all night in DC when he has a literal pitch meeting with literal Walmart in the literal morning. It's also kind of fun to see him speedrun becoming a guard again throughout the movie. The confidence with which he handles the Brennan situation and also pulls that flashlight maneuver on him, suiting up in the guard uniform, navigating this new concept of paintings, interacting with and managing new exhibits, flying an airplane, and fighting a bigger, badder, more dangerous villain. In the novelization, Kamen Ra says he won't be thwarted by some lowly night guard. Lowly? Night guard?
Honey, you've got a big storm coming.
Larry handles it all so well, it's like he never left. Like his friends still refer to him as the guardian of the tablet.
You were the guardian. You know all about this tablet.
I will repeat what Sean Levy said a million times if I must. Larry Daly is the Jedi Knight of Night Guards. Jedi Knight Guard. It seems silly the lengths to which he goes to insist that this isn't him anymore, that he's no longer a night guard. The lengths to which he goes to stay detached from the events that are happening, despite clearly caring so much.
Okay, it's just I got a little buddy stuck in an hourglass. I got a pitch meeting at Walmart in the morning. It would be great if we could...
We can see this in his relationship with Amelia. He tries to get her to back off for so long, but she is not having it. Okay, as much as I hate to admit it, Larry does like Amelia. He has a little crush on her, which is incredibly dumb, and we'll get to that later, but it does serve a small purpose as a part of the larger picture. Obviously, she's wax, which is his biggest qualm. They can't be romantically involved because that would be weird, I guess. I am in so unbelievably deep, I cannot tell if that is weird anymore. Is it weird? It's weird, I think. But also, Amelia reminds Larry of his failures on two different fronts. One is to his friends. He had a duty to protect them and care for them. Remember when we discussed Attila's character and how Attila might be hostile to Larry in the first movie because he's trying to see if Larry's truly there for the exhibits and see if he'll protect them? He's trying to test to see if Larry truly cares, and then he learns that Larry does care and they become good friends? The way Attila glares at him in this movie, it's a look of betrayal, because he really thought Larry would be the one. He was finally able to let his guard down. Guess that was a mistake. Larry hasn't visited the museum in a few months because he's been so busy doing... what exactly? There's this guilt he feels over ignoring his friends because he's been so busy spending time doing something he should love but doesn't. And that leads us to his second failure. His failure to follow through with what he thought was his dream job. Remember in the first movie when he couldn't follow through with anything? Well, now he's got what he wants and he still can't follow through. How pathetic, right? There's this same guilt reappearing because Larry finally got what he wanted and he's not enjoying it. He spent so much of his life focused on this dream and he sacrificed a lot to reach it. and now it's kind of meh. So he keeps pushing and pushing, forcing himself to enjoy it because this was his dream. But baby, forcing yourself to enjoy something might be a sign that you don't love it. In fact, I'd go so far as to say forcing that makes the love fade faster. When Teddy congratulates Larry on the takeoff of his career, we see Larry slip a little.
Seems to me you have everything you wanted.
Yeah, no, I know.
No, you don't.
And apparently that line, "No, you don't," that was improvised, so hats off to Mr. Williams. And Amelia is a constant reminder of this feeling. Larry does like her, but he feels like he can't get attached to her because he might abandon her or fail her, just like he always does. With his friends, with his job.
Okay, don't blame me if something happens to you.
Meanwhile, she's doing whatever she wants, whenever she wants, because it's fun.
Do you know why I became a pilot?
I don't know.
For the fun of it. Why else would anyone do anything?
Larry can't seem to do that because he's so focused on what he has to do. He just disguises that has to as a want to. And Amelia calls him out on this, which makes it way worse. She's telling him he's lost his moxie and that he can't live in the moment, etc., etc., and Larry gets defensive. Kamen Ra even voices these fears.
Must be a real bummer for you, Larry, knowing that all of your valiant efforts were in the end for naught. What a terrible disappointment you must be to yourself.
Because he doesn't want to admit he chose the wrong career path. He doesn't want to admit that he doesn't like where his life is headed. He doesn't want to admit he became the very thing he made fun of.
1 sec, I just gotta... got this Japanese deal.
And he doesn't want to admit that he wants to kiss Amelia. It takes real balls to admit these kinds of things. All because of this sense of has to over want to. And obviously through the events of the movie, he overcomes this supposed duty. So when does the switch flip? When do we go from...
Okay, it's just I got a little buddy stuck in an hourglass. I got a pitch meeting at Walmart in the morning. It would be great if we could...
To...
I gotta get you guys back.
In case you forgot, Gigantor, they don't want us there anymore.
Well, I do.
When do we go from...
Who are you?
Larry Daly. Daily Devices?
To...
What are you?
I'm the night guard.
I don't think there's an exact moment. In fact, I'd venture to say that he always was going to bring the New York crew back, at least in the back of his mind. And it's a series of moments that confirms this little baby spark in his head. It's seeing all of his friends trapped in a crate and realizing, oh, he misses them. It's seeing Jed stuck in an hourglass and realizing, oh, it's his job to protect them. It's Amelia accusing him of losing his moxie and realizing, oh, he did lose his moxie. He's lost his spark. It's flying the airplane and realizing, oh, he misses the adventure. And I think the biggest thing happens at the end of the movie. Larry apologizes to Jedediah for not being around, but Jedediah will not hear it.
I didn't call you because we needed your help. No, partner. I called you because you needed us.
And he realizes Jedediah is right. Larry needs this job. He needs his friends. It's what gave him purpose in life. And most importantly, it's what made him happy. And not moments later, all of his friends round the corner ready to charge into battle. This is where he belongs. So yeah, this movie doesn't contradict Larry's character development from the first movie. We'll explore this a little bit more in the themes bit, but in movie 1, he learns what it means to be great. In movie 2, he learns to be happy. Personal growth is not linear, and we all need reminders of what's important, what matters to us, because it's very easy to lose sight of that in this chaotic mess of a world. This character is not a caricature. He's a real person with flaws and setbacks and mistakes, and I'm glad we get to see him work through that. Because when he says this...
Stick around a bit longer this time?
I'm gonna stay.
Stay for a long time, yeah.
We know he means it.
Let's go to work.
Have a sword. Sword!
I did not feel like putting on the whole getup, but I do got the bandana, and it's red, so that covers both of them. I thought we'd do a brief checkup on these boys, who no longer need to be discussed separately because they are a unit. They are no longer Jedediah and Octavius, they are Jedediah and Octavius. As expected, we are here to discuss the two traits these characters embody, manliness and gay. Obviously, through the events of the first movie, they learn to trust each other and other people like Larry. They learn that maybe they're not so different, and that maybe they actually do work well together, and maybe they actually like each other? They also see Larry treat them with respect. So, now everybody likes each other, the miniatures can drop their guard and be themselves and have fun without worrying about fighting or being picked up by giants. The end. All of this doesn't mean these guys are no longer manly or tough. Being a man and being into stereotypically manly things doesn't prevent you from also caring and forming close bonds, including with other men. These things can coexist, and we see that through Jedediah and Octavius. Despite being the most vulnerable people in the crate, they know that they're the ones who have to save the day because they're the only ones who can escape the crate. After a brief chat, they chest bump, which I think is so adorable because I think that's just how they show affection. Obviously, they should just kiss, but given the way that they are, I think this chest bump is an I love you in a way. It's a we may not make it out of here alive, and if that is the case, we are going down together and we are going down swinging because I love you, but this is the only way I know how to show affection chest bump. When one of Al Capone's cronies spots them, it's immediate danger. Octavius refuses to leave Jedediah's side, but Jedediah insists that he leave because one of two things can happen. Octavius can be manly and stand up to the crony and fight to fulfill his duty as a man. This will result in both of their capture. Alternatively, Octavius leaves and comes up with a plan from outside of a cage to help Larry and his friends, and most importantly Jedediah, because Jedediah knows without a doubt that Octavius will come back for him.
Oh, he's coming back, Takara. Sure as moon shines on a mongoose, we'll be here.
From that moment on, the two miniatures are alone, facing a world that vastly outsizes them, and they go through some harrowing trials. On Octavius's end, he traverses the whole Smithsonian in one night. He fights a massive, monster-like squirrel somewhere deep in the grasses of the White House lawn. He bravely asks the Lincoln Memorial statue for help, and as we all know, asking for help is a feat on its own, especially for men like Octavius who are conditioned to take charge and know all of the answers. But on top of that, the Lincoln statue is like 20 times the size of even Larry. Like, he probably couldn't even see Octavius very well. He was gonna ask the literal President of the United States, literal Barack Obama, for help. I would have loved to see that happen, just for sure, to cement Barack Obama in the Night at the Museum canon. He tames the squirrel that was hell-bent on killing him and rides that squirrel directly into the battle, right up to the feet of the enemy. Octavius rushes through a battle of giants to get Jedediah out of the hourglass, and they join the fight, slashing ankles and such. On Jedediah's end, he gets captured by a 1920s gang member who's no stranger to violence. He gets shoved in a bird cage and presented to an evil pharaoh, who uses Jedediah against Larry to get the tablet, which he probably feels so guilty for. Like, not only is his masculinity being insulted, but his powerlessness is at fault here. Like, it's the reason Larry has to submit to the bad guy. He's dropped into an hourglass, stuck wondering if and when he'll die, all while being teased and shaken around by Kamen Ra. This doesn't stop Jedediah from biting back though, taking every opportunity he can to insult the pharaoh. After Larry drops the hourglass, Jedediah's kicked around and left to come to terms with his probable death until Octavius breaks him out and they head straight into battle. I would like to add that they missed an excellent opportunity to explore Jedediah's relationship to sand after the movie. He's a cowboy. He spent his whole life in the desert and has his whole miniature life too, and now he's almost killed by it in a horrible way, and I think there's something there to dissect. Maybe too much for a kid's movie, but interesting nonetheless. Suffice to say, these two guys are incredibly brave, and when faced with danger, they don't back down or shy away. They get bigger and bolder to compensate for their fear. We mentioned this a bit in the first movie, but Octavius and especially Jedediah are prone to putting up a facade when they're scared, and we see that return in this movie. For Octavius, we see it at its strongest here.
Easy. Do you wish to surrender honorably? Or must this end with the spilling of your blood?
And we see that facade slip when there's no one around and it's just him and the squirrel.
Jupiter protect me.
For Jedediah, oh boy do we see this guise of fearlessness rear its head so many times.
You know, there are two words come to mind when I hear you talk. Delusional and weirdo. And if I had to say a third, goofy, just goofy. You are crazier than a road lizard. Oh, he's coming back, Takara. Look a little nervous there, ramen noodle. Because for me, this is like a spa treatment. Giving up yet? I ain't shaggy-headed. Giganto, let me take this guy.
And we see that slip for him in one brief clip when Kamen Ra asks if he expected his friends to run off like that.
Oh, I would save my breath if I were you. You don't have many left.
Because of course Jedediah is confident in Octavius and Larry. They will fight to their last breath for him. But he can't help the fact that he's scared. He might die in literally less than an hour and he has no control over it. His life is in everybody else's hands except his own. And like with Octavius, when you're a man who's been conditioned to take charge and know all of the answers, that can be pretty scary. So yeah, these guys will be manly until the day that they die, but that doesn't mean they don't love each other. We already talked about the I love you chest bump. We talked about Jedediah's unwavering confidence in Octavius and Octavius doing everything in his power to save Jedediah. This movie is where we really start to see them form a romantic relationship. In the first movie, they went from enemies to close friends. Like, they are attached at the hip. They are not gonna leave each other. So what happens if we force them apart? Ah, yes, see, they start to fall into their old habits of building up walls to protect themselves. They want to reunite the whole movie, Octavius especially, who will go to the ends of the earth to save Jedediah. Don't you think that's a little, I don't know,
homosexual?
And if all else fails, the hourglass scene is just...
Octavius, remember me as I was, wild and free.
No need for final words.
Oh, I'm not finished yet.
Oh.
I want to get to the story of our relationship, the evolution from enemy to friends.
No!
It'll make you cry.
Not to mention the other major trapped in an hourglass scene that exists in the mind of everyone ever is between romantic love interests. Come on! I can't believe Sean Levy invented gay people twice.
Lance, good to see you, lad.
There aren't really many updates for the other characters from the first movie. Teddy is still Teddy, you know, not directly giving Larry answers, but gently guiding him towards what he needs to learn.
Remember the other night you were saying something about the key to happiness?
Did I?
I think I got it figured out. It's doing what you love, isn't it? With people you love.
Actually, I was going to say physical exercise, but the love thing's good too.
When Teddy froze before he could reveal the secret in the beginning, I'm gonna be honest, I don't think he was ever gonna tell Larry. I think he was gonna drag it out until the sun rose. And when he says, I was gonna say physical exercise, no, he was not. He knows exactly what he's doing. Did he know how exactly it was gonna happen? No. But he knows Larry, and he knows the rest of the exhibits, and he knows Dexter. Something would eventually lead Larry to the self-discovery he needed to find. Teddy just planted the seed. And the bust of Teddy is so funny. Like, in the script and in the bloopers of the movie and in the novelization, he says, oh, you want to know the secret to happiness?
Having a body.
That was actually more than I intended to speak on Teddy, but really nothing's changed. Other characters. Sacagawea once again has very few lines, and her main personality trait of not wanting to help stupid men remains. And I still can't tell if that Custer joke is racist.
You.
Attila is also not given many things to say, but the glare that he sends Larry in the beginning does send chills down my spine, and he looks cool as f*** in the final battle. Akmenraw's barely in the movie, but his tour guide bit at the end is priceless.
Nothing, it's just for decoration.
Dexter steals the tablet, big surprise, and he slaps Larry. What else is new? He fights with Abel over Larry, like, this is my human, and it definitely has captions as to what they're saying, but they sure aren't in the version I have downloaded to my laptop. McPhee is less McPhee in this movie, but still McPhee.
Well. See, the uniform still fits after these long, long years.
I just wanted an excuse to include him in here. And that's about it.
Lady? Who are you calling lady? The name is Amelia. Amelia Earhart. Perhaps you've heard of me?
Oh, Amelia, where do I start with you? Feminism, I guess. Feminism is a very broad topic with a lot of waves and nuances, and there are a lot of diverse takes and issues, and I don't mean to generalize or downplay anything, we just don't have a lot of time to get super deep on an issue that's actually quite personal and unique to each individual. I want to say this very carefully because I do really enjoy Amelia's character. However, she is generally a feminist in a 2009 Hollywood movie. Like, she herself makes some pretty good points, but I feel like it's sometimes portrayed as annoying or outlandish. I've always had a problem with this one joke in particular where Larry tries to get rid of her and she asks if it's because she's a woman.
No, it's because I've got this ancient race from the dead evil pharaoh guy who's willing to kill me and probably anyone near me to get this tablet so he can rule the world.
So it is because I'm a woman.
Like, she's a strong female character, but she needs to prove she's a strong female character, which gets weird, especially when you involve her relationship with Larry, which we'll get into in a second. And the movie isn't like this the whole time. Like, it is 100% in support of Amelia. The only thing I can do is repeat that she is what a 2009 Hollywood movie thinks a feminist is. Like when she's confident in throwing the spear, but then it gets caught.
Never send a boy to do a woman's job. I spent 2 weeks spear hunting with a tribe in Micronesia. The Micronesians Phoenicians had much slower reflexes.
Or when the Wright brothers see Amelia flying the plane.
A lady pilot, preposterous!
Think again, boys.
Oh, she's good.
It just feels... yeah. Maybe I'm being too hard on the movie because overall, Amelia is likable. If they wanted to make her annoying, they would have. And it could have been worse. In the script, there's a scene where Larry stares at Venus's boobs, and then Venus uses her boobs to distract the villains in the final battle. In the screenwriter's commentary, Lennon and Garant mentioned that they would ad-lib certain lines in their little scene, including, "We're right behind you, Amelia, and the view is amazing." So maybe we lucked out. On the flip side, I really, truly am devastated to report that Amelia Earhart, at least partially, is a manic pixie dream girl. Okay, stick with me here. First, she's gorgeous. Obviously, look at her. But she's gorgeous in an effortless way. Like, she's not trying to be beautiful, she just is. In a similar vein, everybody is in love with her, or at least is drawn to her. I'm in love with her, you're in love with her, Napoleon's in love with her.
Merci, mademoiselle. Now, if your boyfriend would kindly come with me.
Oh, I'm not her boyfriend.
Just friends. Oh.
No, yeah, friends.
Acquaintances. Friends.
Oh.
In the script, Octavius is in love with her, pretty much every other character points out how stunning she is, weird guys on the internet are too in love with her, and clearly Larry's in love with her. Because in addition to being gorgeous, Amelia has a magnetic personality. She's kind, outgoing, always ready to go on an adventure, and full of energy.
It's made out of spruce and canvas and good old-fashioned American ingenuity. Are you coming or what?
She's the embodiment of moxie. Her spirit and determination and rebelliousness, it's all contagious.
I want to help you, and not because I like you, which so far I don't, but because I smell adventure. And damn it, I want in.
Another important trait for this trope, she's slightly zany. The way she speaks is the obvious example.
Well, this is one humdinger of a hootman. Oh, please stop beating your gums, Mr. Daly. You haven't been able to take your cheaters off my chassis since the moment we met. No, you look, Mr. Daly. If it weren't for me, you'd still be lost in that monochromatic mayhem.
Lost in what?
A black and white photo, you boob. I guess a sassy cephalopod was just a fish who didn't like being out of water. He's not such a ballywagger after all. Criminy, we're jimmy-jacked.
It's silly and fun, and I like it. Amelia's other main quirk is that she will stop in her tracks to enjoy a moment, despite being in a time crunch or in imminent danger. She is constantly living in the moment.
The Tuskegee Airmen are living in the moment.
A good example of this is when she stops to dance with the Degas ballerina, or when she runs off to God knows where when they enter Air and Space, but I really don't blame her because she's Amelia Earhart and this is the Air and Space Museum. Or when she stops Larry to talk about their relationship.
What?
Nothing.
Okay. Why are you staring at me?
I don't want to miss a moment.
Amelia's main flaw, though, is that she's always getting lost. How quirky. But it's not even a flaw because it's painted as a good thing. There's a deleted scene in the script draft and in the book where she says, "I have never been lost a day in my life. I may not have always been on course, but I was always where I belonged, in that cockpit with blue sky all around, doing what I loved." And I'm on the verge of very dangerous territory here because I'm starting to sound like men who call Rey Palpatine and think she's a Mary Sue. Amelia is not a Mary Sue, and for the record, Rey isn't either, but to be honest, who cares if she is? I don't even care if she has flaws. I just wanted to point out that her flaw is oh so quirky and also happens to directly relate to Larry's problem so that she can help him. And that's the big argument I have towards Amelia being a manic pixie dream girl. Her main purpose as a character is to help Larry rediscover his passion. The movie was very clever to pick Amelia Earhart, someone who's famous for getting lost, and then using her as a comparison to Larry, someone who's lost his way in life. Because if this hasn't been stated enough, Amelia may have been lost physically, but she always knew she was where she needed to be in life. On the flippity flip, Larry was never lost physically, except maybe in the stairwell for a brief moment, but God does he not know up from down or right from left when it comes to his direction in life. His philosophy is charge forward and eventually we will hit something. And Amelia is quick to see this, so she pushes him, and pushes him, and pushes him.
Bit of a fraidy cat?
I'm not afraid to come out.
Because she sees the moxie in Larry. She sees that old spark starting to die out, so the movie makes it her mission to keep the spark lit.
I know what you said, Mr. Daly, but what I see in front of me is a man who's lost his moxie.
Okay, remember a few minutes ago when I claimed that Amelia was a manic pixie dream girl, and then I spent the past few minutes convincing you why? Well, if you'll recall with me, Amelia Earhart, at least partially, is a manic pixie dream girl.
At least partially.
Because yeah, she has all of the traits, but I also think she has an inner life separate from Larry that keeps her from completely falling into this category. Whereas the movie makes it her mission to keep Larry's spark lit, I don't think that's her personal goal at all. We have to remember these exhibits came to life the previous night before Larry got there. They got a taste of existence, and now, understandably, they want to make the most of it, because they at least have a vague idea that day equals statue and night equals alive, and who knows how long this alive thing is gonna last. Amelia is smart. She thinks creatively, is quick on her feet, and is good at problem solving. Upon rewatching, it's actually really clear that she knows what's coming at sunrise. Larry's just too hard-headed to see that.
You're made of good, wonderful things.
And once she understands what Larry's doing at the Smithsonian, she probably realizes that this is her last night, so let's go out with a bang. So she makes the most of every moment. Yeah, she's dodging spears and being threatened by a group comprised of history's greatest villains, but also, what does she have to lose? It's fun. Running around and seeing so many works of art come to life, meeting figures who changed the course of history, especially that moment of solidarity she has with the Tuskegee Airmen.
I want to say thank you.
What for, Captain?
A lot of people didn't think we could fly either. Thanks for clearing the runway, ma'am.
Though a little forced, it shows how much of an impact she and others had just by following their dreams. That's a gross generalization, but the moment is sweet nonetheless. Basically, Amelia's having the time of her life, and as a little sort of side quest, she's gonna make Larry have the time of his life too. Like, she's the main character, and he's along for the ride. And we all know what it's like to think you can fix a man, blah 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 blah. To Larry, it might just be another night. But to her, it's her only night. And this attitude radiates off of her to the point that Larry feels it and realizes that this stuff is special, and we only get one shot at life. Does he want to spend it in an office or at a museum where history literally comes alive every night? Plus, it's always fun to tease Larry. His buttons are so easy to press. So boy, is she gonna press them. Ah yes, the talking point I've been avoiding. Because for the longest time, I hated it. We're gonna make our strong, independent female lead fall in love with our protagonist, who's just a guy. Great. Which is true, it's still not my favorite thing ever. Like, she flip-flops so much from
I want to help you, and not because I like you, which so far I don't.
To
Well, Mr. Daly, I quite like the way you're holding me.
And it's annoying because the movie pretends it's a will they, won't they sort of situation, but it's so very obvious that they will, and it's not super clear what she even likes about him. However, I've been thinking, which is a feat all on its own, and she doesn't love him. Like, yeah, it's a little baby crush. Like, I think we all have a little baby crush on Larry. I'm not letting you refute me on this one because I'm scared that I'm alone with this, and that would be embarrassing. But of course she's going to act on it. What would you do if you had a little baby crush on someone and had one day left to live? And I like seeing a woman pursue a man with such confidence. So not only is it fun for both us and Amelia to see Larry get flustered, but it's also empowering to see her pursue a man without that being her main purpose or goal. Because even if Larry embraced his crush from the beginning and they were a couple the whole movie, I don't think much would change. Amelia's tenacious and unwavering. A man she just met is not gonna change her personality or really anything about her.
Look,
No, you look, Mr. Daly.
She knows this isn't long term, so I repeat for the 1000th time, let's have fun with it. Amelia is a much more complex character than we give her credit for. She's grappling with being dead for decades and suddenly coming back to life for 2 nights only, yet she chooses to radiate positivity and a sense of adventure and wonder.
You've given me the adventure of a lifetime in one night. And I have a feeling it's going to be a beautiful sunrise. Have fun.
She is so cool. I love her. The last thing I'd like to say is that Amy Adams is amazing and perfect for this role. Like, she makes the caricature feel so grounded and real and likable. And oh, also Amelia is queer. Hey, okay, look at me. Now look at her. I rest my case.
I am Ka-Moon Ra, the great king of the great kings.
Ka-Moon Ra. What a silly guy. Also, what an evil guy. Let's talk about that. In the screenwriter's commentary, they mentioned that Hank Azaria did 2 takes for every scene, 1 goofy and 1 evil and scary. From there, the editors did their magic, and I must say the final product is perfect. The screenwriters claim that he starts out scary and then slowly gets goofier over time, which reads as him going insane. And while I do think that's true, if you consult my Ka-Moon Ra scary to goofy line graph, he's actually kind of all over the place, though I'd say there's a very general downward trend from scary to goofy. That is, until the final battle where he goes full scary again. All of that is to say, Hank Azaria gives an excellent performance as Ka-Moon Ra. The exaggerated, grand British, Boris Karloff-esque accent.
But this kind of story, not of necessity the monster, but This kind of story seems to go on forever.
With a lisp, somehow feels so appropriate for the character. Like, surprisingly, it doesn't take me out of the scene. If anything, it adds to it.
That tablet is more powerful than you, Larry Daly of Daly Devices, can possibly imagine.
Yeah, the accent is silly, but he's still convincingly frightening. A+. I also noticed he has nice eyelashes. Now, whether Hank Azaria should be able to play an Egyptian is questionable, but I don't really have the right to make that call. This is also to say the editors did something magical when they pieced Common Raw together to give us a compelling and interesting villain that still fits the style of Night at the Museum. Now, he's no Cecil, Reginald, and Gus. I really appreciated the first movie for making the villains some guys with a strong motivation for their actions, not a magical evil entity who's evil for the sake of being evil.
Meanwhile, a short distance away, Snidely Whiplash was up to his favorite pastime, tying women to railroad tracks.
We abandoned that concept because Night at the Museum 2 Dead Man's Chest is bigger than the first movie, so the villain needs to be bigger. So I'm not entirely mad, I'm just picky when it comes to villain motivation, I guess. To find this for Common Raw, I want to piece together his backstory real quickly. We're not going to get too bogged down in the exact timeline right now, because looking for consistency in this timeline sent me into a downward spiral I still have not recovered from. I do plan to cover a complete timeline in my essay on the third movie, so stay tuned. On the broadest scale, Common Raw was probably born somewhere between 1155 and 1114 BC to Merenkere, current pharaoh of Egypt, and Shepseheret. A number of years down the line, his brother Akhmun Ra is born. Akhmun Ra was clearly the favorite child. Merenkere said that when Akhmun Ra was born, he was instantly more precious to him than all the wonders of the ancient world. So we know at that point, their parents already had a distaste for Common Ra. Akhmun Ra was given a bigger temple and the throne, despite Common Ra being older, and Akhmun Ra was buried with the family while Common Ra was not. This doesn't have to do with their parents, but to add salt to the wound, Akhmun Ra was displayed at Cambridge while Common Ra was displayed at Birmingham Tech. I also think it's an interesting difference between them as to who thinks what is more powerful. Like, bringing things to life is the coolest thing that the tablet does to Akhmun Ra, but to Common Ra, opening a gate to the underworld is the coolest thing that it does.
Bringing things back to life is just a parlor trick. With it, I shall unlock the gate to the underworld.
It's impossible for us to know whether Common Ra was an evil little brat of his own accord and his parents reacted accordingly, or if his parents were abusive assholes and he adapted. Nature versus nurture. I think both options are equally valid, though the movies do tend to lean towards the former. I think it's safe to assume that he was a terrible child to begin with, and his parents reacted harshly, and it was a never-ending cycle of trauma and lack of communication skills. Either way, his parents despised him so much that they changed the tablet combination on him.
I'm afraid that mother and father may have slightly changed the combination on me.
And sent him down the River Nile in a basket at 27 years old to get rid of him. So even if Common Ra was evil from the start, he's given plenty of reasons to continue being evil. Eventually, Merenkere and maybe Shepseheret die, and Akhmun Ra assumes the throne, though I'd wager he was probably regent for a while now. Common Ra takes this as a sign, and without anyone to stop him, he seizes the opportunity and murders Akhmun Ra. Whoa, back up, I don't remember that in the movie. Yeah, that's fair. It's in a draft of the script, though I wholeheartedly believe it. I mean, it falls perfectly in line with his character. He was the ruler of Egypt for at least a short time.
I am Khamun Ra, the great king of the great kings. I am a century-old Egyptian pharaoh.
We know Akhmun Ra had the throne before him.
They even gave him the throne which was rightfully mine.
And we know Akhmun Ra died incredibly young. I'm counting it. We also don't know how long Common Ra's reign was, though I'd assume it's short and bloody given the everything we know about him. It's probable that he didn't get what he wanted out of his reign. We also don't know how he died. My theory is that he was murdered because of how awful and tyrannical he was, but that's just a theory. You can make it whatever you want. To add to all of this, I saw a theory out there that Common Ra's actually not the son of Shepseheret. He's the son of a lesser wife. In Egypt, pharaohs had multiple wives, but there was one great wife. The pharaoh's successor was usually the eldest son of the great wife, and if he couldn't rule, then it was the eldest son of a lesser wife. Generally. It would track that Common Ra is Merenkere's eldest son, so he feels like he has a claim to the throne, but because he was born to a lesser wife and Akhmun Ra to the great wife, Akhmun Ra actually holds that claim. I would 1010% believe this, if not for Common Ra saying,
You know, mother and father always gave him the best of everything, and I do mean everything.
He says this like they shared a mother, so take from this what you will, but I'm going to say unfortunately, this line invalidates that theory. Another super fun theory is that Common Ra's not real. Hear me out. The museum made up a generic pharaoh, and when he comes to life, he figures out through the New York exhibits who Akhmun-Ra is, and he latches onto that as his backstory, similar to Lancelot's situation. This would explain why he doesn't have a real body anywhere, or why he's never mentioned in the first or third movie. The fourth movie kind of contradicts this, though, when Merenkere speaks to him.
Why do you get to be in all the museums and not me?
You really want to have this conversation now?
This theory is super valid. I personally don't believe it because Akhmun-Ra has too much knowledge of everything, and his motivations and the stakes of the movie themselves wouldn't be as strong if he wasn't real. Regardless, Akhmun-Ra is evil, he knows he's evil, and he enjoys being evil. Like, his attitude is, the world f***ed me over, so why shouldn't I f*** it over and have a good time doing it? Speaking of motivations, did you like that transition? What is his? Remember when I said brief review of Akhmun-Ra's backstory? To find this for Akhmun-Ra, I want to piece together his backstory
real quickly.
Yeah, sorry. But it does set up his character. I've always struggled with villains whose goal is to rule the world or take over the world. Like, why? That sounds awful. Well, good thing Akhmun-Ra's here to tell us why. 1, it's the principle of it. He spent so long chasing after something he genuinely thought was rightfully his. He murdered and lied and cheated to get there. He faced so many obstacles and his family was the main one. Then finally, after so long of feeling wronged, he gets the throne only for a moment before he dies. If he couldn't have the throne in life, he better be able to have it in the afterlife. 2, control. Who wants control, you may ask? I do. I want control. You want control. Akhmun-Ra especially wants control. Not necessarily control of the world for all of us, but we as humans do not like chaos. It's unknowable and therefore scary. You ever get put in a group project and you're like, wow, these people will just mess everything up. I should just do the whole project myself. I'm not saying that's a good thing, but we all do feel that feeling at some point or another. And Akhmun-Ra's a narcissist, so of course he thinks he can do everything better all the time. In addition to that, he grew up being evil. I'm sure he made a lot of enemies in life, and we literally see him make tons of enemies in the afterlife. Having control over these people and having guards to protect him guarantees his safety. Being in that position of power gives him an automatic shield from people he knows he's pissed off enough that they want him dead. 3, Akhmun-Ra has not been alive for the past couple of thousand years. He doesn't know anything about modern politics. When he says he wants to rule the world, the image that he has in his head is from an era that's long gone. What comes with being pharaoh? Countless women, unlimited religious, political, and military power, riches beyond compare? Akhmun-Ra probably still imagines a world similar to how ancient Egypt functioned. And I know that's a generalization because ancient Egypt spanned a long period of time and changed a lot, but please bear with me. I'm not saying he wouldn't want to rule the world if he knew what our current legal system looked like. I'm just saying his idea of rule the world is a bit misguided by today's standards. So I think Akhmun-Ra's motivations are solid. And for this movie being what it is, they didn't have to give him reason. They just needed a big bad villain, but they actually gave us a complex and interesting character. We were bound to face a magical villain sooner or later, and I think this was the best way they could have handled it. And also, he's just funny. He's the main source of my laughter throughout the film. The way he doesn't understand Larry's handshake here? Hilarious. The way he looks so proud when he announces he's come back to life. And what do you mean you're half god once removed on your mother's side? What does that mean? I'm calling bullshit. He just wanted to impress the other bad guys.
The most feared leader in all of history. Gentlemen. Really, it's just fantastic to meet you all. And those to meet you.
Akhmun-Ra is the perfect mix of a scary villain and a comedic genius, and that's why he fits the tone and works so well as a Night at the Museum antagonist. You absolutely want to see him lose, but you love every single second he's on screen. Mwah.
General George A. Custer, the fighting U.S. 7th Cavalry, at your service.
General Custer. We do not like him. I want to make it very, very clear that he is not a good guy and we dislike him. I think we like Bill Hader, though. I don't know enough to be sure, so I think I'm neutral about him, but at least he puts 110% of his energy into this character, and it shows. Custer is a wild ride from start to finish.
Take the wheel!
What?
I said take the wheel! Oh, we're in it now.
He's pretty funny, and disregarding historical context, he's easy to root for, because the movie says he's not bad, he's just stupid. His heart's in the right place. As he points out, we all remember him for blundering the Battle of Little Bighorn, for failing tremendously. So now we kind of want to see him pull through and achieve a win. Custer's like the underdog, I guess. And he does pull out a win. Ish. He's on the side that wins, and he led them to that victory. And most importantly, he has a moment of personal growth. He realizes that maybe it doesn't matter how he's remembered. What matters is what happened here tonight. What matters is he learned to be confident in himself again. All of this happens through Larry's speech.
The past is the past, okay? Right now, this moment, this night, this is what you're gonna be remembered for. This is your last stand.
Honestly, Larry's speech to Custer is more a testament to Larry's character growth than Custer's. Larry's grown so much that he can fill the mentor archetype that Teddy filled for him, and Custer's going through a lot of the same issues that he did. They both feel like failures, and they're both concerned with how history's going to remember them. After the events of both movies, Larry can confidently assure Custer that this night is what matters. History's going to remember what it's going to remember, and no matter what you do, you can't change that. But every single person in this room is going to remember your bravery and leadership for the rest of their lives, and isn't that so much better? That these people you care way more about than the faceless group that is history will look back on this moment and think kindly of you? Larry's saying this all to Custer, but also to himself. To remind himself that it may be cool if he's remembered for the glow-in-the-dark flashlight, but eventually people will move on. These people, these exhibits he cares about, they'll remember his compassion and loyalty until the end of time. Obviously, these movies surround history, so they're always going to have the theme of legacy just pre-built into them. Custer's character speaks to the bad part of this. People remember him for his biggest failure, and that sucks. I might also add that in real life, he was stupid, hot-headed, racist, and arrogant. He was merciless in killing Native Americans in the Indian Wars, and he frequently boasted about and exaggerated his achievements. He was not a great guy. So I think it's interesting that the movie chose Custer specifically, especially when this character's purpose is to raise a discussion on redemption. How much bad can we do before we're unable to be redeemed? What does redemption even look like? Is it redemption if nobody's around to witness it? And who decides if we're redeemed? These are all questions I'm not going to give answers to, but they're questions the movie asks us. Do I think Custer was redeemed? Honestly, no. I really would like to say yes, but he doesn't take accountability for the horrible things he did, and he doesn't even really lead anybody or anything in any meaningful way.
Let's do this. All right?
Yeah.
Let's go.
Was he redeemed in his own eyes, or even in the eyes of some of the exhibits there? Yeah, probably. Sometimes I wish the movie picked a different person from history. Somebody who wasn't horrible. Somebody who was just stupid or made a mistake and is remembered for that. But then the questions I just mentioned would be easy to answer. Yeah, they're redeemed. End of story. Custer being terrible challenges us to think deeper about this issue. And also, I couldn't think of anybody who did a stupid thing and is remembered for it and isn't evil and is also a leader in some kind of way. I forced myself to look for some examples, because if I told the movie that they had to pick someone else, I better be able to do so myself. But I ended up on like Reddit threads of people defending historical figures who should definitely not be defended, so I called it quits. So maybe General Custer was the right choice. And his line at the end?
The Battle of the Smithsonian. Perhaps the greatest battle the world will never know.
We'll know.
It's moving. It's poetic in a way. This is one of the most important nights in these people's lives, and the amount of blood, sweat, and tears they put into the fight for their freedom and for the world is so admirable. But nobody's gonna remember it. To anybody outside these walls, this night did not happen. Anyway, real Custer was bad, and we cannot ignore that or brush it off to the side. But movie Custer is fine. He's a character who you can laugh at and not feel bad for laughing at him.
Won't yelling attack alert the enemy that we are about to attack?
He's dumb and loud, and hey, we've all been there.
Ivan the Terrible, Napoleon Bonaparte, and young Al Capone.
These guys are so funny. This is all due in part to the wonderful actors who honestly look like they're having the time of their lives. Like Christopher Guest, who plays Ivan the Terrible, apparently doesn't like to be in movies if he doesn't direct them, I don't know, but he loved Night at the Museum so much that he was interested in doing the movie. Alain Chabat, who plays Napoleon and is a massive star over in France, actually auditioned for the part. What? Every single time they're on screen, I laugh. The way Ivan's riding a bicycle and for why? Or when he says this?
Make your feet move.
The way the you guys like friends in college scene is the best scene in the whole movie. And my mom agrees with me on this one, so it is a fact. The way Al Capone is so nonchalant about everything until the gate to the underworld opens and now there's bird warriors and a giant Abraham Lincoln and now it's, oh, I did not sign up for this shit. And we'll see it later, but it sucks that some of Al Capone's best stuff is in the deleted scenes. And a lot of the deleted scenes generally contain villain stuff because, as Sean Levy mentioned in the director's commentary, audiences were always eager to get back to the Lyria-Amelia plotline, and we'd kind of lose focus of the main goal. And I get it, because if they were in the movie more, I'd probably think it was too much. But as it stands right now, I think it's too little. Maybe that's what makes a good comedic character, to have the restraint to not use them so much. Because it's certainly better to want more of a character than to be sick of them. Anyway, it's awesome that these guys get to be the comic relief. They don't need to be serious or threatening in any way because we all know Common Ra is the big bad. He can take care of the scary and intimidating aspect, and that keeps the threat level and the stakes high. So these guys can just goof off. Like, we know they're not gonna be Larry's main antagonist, so let's just have some fun with it. But because I'm me, I did find a theme that runs throughout these characters, and it's the concept of legacy, much like Custer. All of these villains have been misremembered in some way. Something was lost in translation, and now they're all unhappy with the way history remembers them. For Ivan, he literally says it.
People always say, Ivan the Terrible. Oh, he's so terrible. Oh, I'm so scared of Ivan. He's bad news. When in fact, the correct translation is Ivan the Awesome.
Though in the novelization, he has a character arc so that in the end, he embraces the name. He is Ivan the Terrible. For Napoleon, it's his height.
No offense, I just, you're Napoleon was like a complex named after you. You're famous for being little. It's true. Look, hey.
You naive American man boy.
Yeah, obviously he's remembered for more, like being a prominent military leader and also Emperor of France, but when we think Napoleon, we think, haha, short.
Short! Why do you look at me when you say short? Sorry.
For Al Capone, he's remembered as a crime boss who got for tax evasion. Tax evasion. He got for tax evasion. It's interesting that the movie picked these three guys. Like, I don't think, based on my extremely limited knowledge and brief Google searches, that these are the most evil people from history. Maybe Ivan, I don't know. But Al Capone and Napoleon feel like they might be on the General Custer level of evil. I should stop claiming claims when I don't know what I'm talking about. But what I do know is that Common Ra was on a time crunch and was limited only to the Smithsonian. So he picked the three most evil people he could find as quickly as possible, and with those limitations, I think he lucked out. Pretty good options if you ask me. Though I am sad to report that Al Capone is homophobic. In the script, when Napoleon is explaining the kiss of death, Al Capone says, "Yeah, well, everybody knows you Frenchies like to kiss each other." Not actively homophobic, but passively. You're on thin ice, pal. Yeah, there's not much to talk about with these guys except for the fact that they are goofy and I like them. And despite their seeming lack of importance, they do help paint a bigger picture that is the bad side of legacy. Those are our characters for this movie. I'd like to list a few honorable mentions who are too small to give their own section, but there's this guy, who I love, and he is my favorite. There's this guy who seems thoroughly shocked that the Easter Island head asked him for Gum Gum. And then there's two guys who, when the miniatures are stabbing feet, yell, I think about them sometimes. And Keith Powell's Tuskegee Airman, who keeps announcing everything that they're doing, it's incredibly funny. I want a remake of Night at the Museum where it's exactly the same, but it's just this guy narrating everything. Sean Levy as the dad in the infomercial. Much like the first movie, these characters, not these guys, but these guys make the movie. Honestly, the plot can do whatever the heck it wants, because our love for the Night at the Museum franchise is based in our love for the characters. This time around, there's way more of them, but they're all lovable just the same. You know the drill, onto a draft of the script. It's called Escape from the Smithsonian, and it's dated November 4th, 2007. There was another earlier version of the script called Riddle of the Pyramids, though I don't have access to that one. There's a lot of plot points that were added, omitted, or just different, but overall, the main characters and central themes remain consistent. There are even moments that take us back to the first movie as a way to almost comfort us, or at least assure us that we're with the same characters we know and love. Like, this is small, but when an actual Smithsonian guard confronts him, Larry BS's his way through in typical Larry fashion, and it's so fun to see, or read, like, hey, this new Larry is jarring, but I remember this is still him. He says he just got transferred from natural history, and when asked about his uniform, which is currently his New York uniform, he says it's the new 09 uniform and that this guard will be getting his soon. He pretends to size him up, and in doing so is able to steal the guard's badge and everything. Like, it's so Larry. He even name drops Brandon to build up his credibility. And yes, I have horrible news. There's no Brandon bit here. Larry Larry briefly gets yelled at by a scrawny guard named Brandon for touching an exhibit, and then Brandon makes a reappearance at the end when he sees the aftermath of the battle and a crashed Amelia Earhart with a smile on her face. I wish I could say I'm happy about this, but I can't. I love the Brandon bit so much. But yeah, same stuff. Larry misplaced his moxie and Amelia helps him find it. He's still grappling with the same stuff we mentioned in his character analysis earlier, you know, business success versus happiness, the works. We'll talk about this later, but the movie has a theme that essentially boils down to technology equal bad.
People love this stuff. People, Mr. Daly, love what's next. You should know that. You left.
The script doesn't have this, besides McPhee saying that the donor is some 22-year-old who wants to bring the museum to the future. Like when Teddy offers the key to happiness, Larry's phone doesn't interrupt them, the sun just happens to rise. But the reason this is so frustrating in the script is because the tablet is going with the exhibits to the Smithsonian, so Larry literally might never find out the key to happiness. Or so he thinks. The problem is, Larry would never let this happen. I think they mentioned in one of the commentaries that this had to change because if Larry knew the whole goddamn Smithsonian was about to come to life, he'd do something. He wouldn't say, I'll come visit you all once you get settled in. He'd say, uh-oh. Regardless, the tablet and Achman Ra get sent to the Smithsonian. And I know Rami Malek had some sort of filming schedule conflict, but God, what I wouldn't give to one, see more Achman Ra and see more Rami Malek, and two, see Achman Ra and Kamen Ra interact. First of all, we get to see more of who Achman Ra is. We get that he's kind and forgiving. That was all in the last movie, and it's backed up by the novelization of the second movie, where Larry makes Dexter apologize to Achman Ra for taking the tablet, and Achman Ra forgives him with a smile. Like his most prized possession and the only thing that ties him to his deceased family, and he's like, no worries, dude. But here, we get to see Achman Ra's darker side, just a smidge. In the crate with the other exhibits, he comes up with the most elaborate plan to escape, involving TNT and the Huns slamming their bodies against the door to break it open, hopefully crushing the guards on the other side. This would also help build this side of his character before it comes out in the third movie, because it feels like it kind of flies in out of nowhere.
At their size, they're baked like tiny little scarabs in the Sinai. Too dark.
His dark moments in the third movie are funny, don't get me wrong, but having this plan in the second movie would make it make a little more sense. Also, Achman Ra hates his brother, which is fair, especially if Kamen Ra murdered him. I just think it's so crazy that we don't ever get to see them interact in the movies. Their interactions in the script, though? Seldom, but golden. Like, they bicker a bit like regular siblings, and it's so silly, but because of the heightened circumstances and world building, we see Achman Ra bound and gagged in a corner, and it's implied he was probably tortured for the combination to the tablet and various other things. So when all of this culminates in the end,
oh boy.
Larry and Kamen Ra don't get to have their battle, which is disappointing, but Larry backs into a spear and is almost killed by Kamen Ra, until there's a sword at Kamen Ra's throat, and it's Achman Ra. Kamen Ra pleads with Larry, offering him women, money, whatever he wants, but Larry's like, actually, I'm good. Achman Ra, why don't you show your brother the door? And Achman Ra says, with pleasure, and kicks Kamen Ra in the chest and sends him flying into the underworld. I'm screaming, I'm crying, I'm throwing up. Of course it's only right that Achman Ra gets to kill him. It's poetic justice. We get to see this sweet, innocent boy absolutely murder his older brother. What? God, I wish we could have had that. But then we wouldn't get the flashlight battle and
I'm the night guard.
Which is super important to Larry's character and also just bad. This is a small tangent, but Sean Levy says that line reads funny half the time and serious the other, and I think it's both. Like, I think it's a very cool and serious moment in Larry's character arc, and I think he's sort of embracing the silly. He knows how funny he sounds, but to him, it's the most important thing in the whole world, so who cares if anyone laughs? Where were we? Oh yeah, the script. So because the tablet is going with them, Teddy no longer has a small lie he needs to tell because it's more noble than delivering a painful truth.
Sometimes it's more noble to tell a small lie than deliver a painful truth.
So they give him something different to lie about. He told everyone that going to the Smithsonian would be so cool. So fun. In reality, he has no idea what the Smithsonian is going to be like. I mean, they're literally going to the Federal Archives, so they could end up trapped in boxes and bags forever. And to think of how scared the exhibits must have been when they initially found out. Larry's been gone for months, so they can't confide in him, the only person who really knows the outside world. Teddy has to step into Larry's role and comfort them. We hear his efforts in the things the exhibits say to Larry. Like Octavia says it's an honor that they've been handpicked. Like they don't just select anyone to go to the Smithsonian. And Jedediah says, yeah, no more prying eyes or poking fingers. How sweet of Teddy. Pivoting quite a bit, you can tell the creators loved Star Wars because on top of everyone calling Larry the Jedi Knight of Night Guards, Jedi Knight Guard, there's also quite a few Star Wars references in the script. Instead of the Cube of Rubik, Larry calls the mysterious thing the Sword of Amidala. Originally, they wanted Harrison Ford to announce the holograms in the Museum of Natural History in the beginning. And one of the things that gets Larry to help his friends in DC is thinking about what Leia said to Obi-Wan.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
So, Star Wars. A thing that happens a lot in the script is the good guys engage the villain in some sort of meaningless thing, and then once the villain is distracted, they bolt in the other direction. With the Egyptians, it sort of happens by accident. Custer suggests he and Larry charge the Egyptians on their own, and Custer does, but Larry says, yeah, good luck with that, and takes off in the other direction. With Ivan, it's a foot race with his Streltsy. Amelia's like, listen, you caught us. Like, either way you win, so why not? And Ivan tells his Streltsy to run like the Siberian wind, and when the race starts, Amelia and Larry take off in the other direction. With Napoleon, it's obviously a height comparison. What else could it be? Larry calls Napoleon little man. Napoleon says they're basically the same height. They get back to back, and Larry asks Amelia who's taller, then grabs her hand and, you guessed it, takes off in the other direction. Napoleon traps them again anyway and calls this a maneuver de derrière. Kind of unrelated, kind of related. When Larry and Common Raw meet, Common Raw's like, oh, from how your friends talked about you, I expected someone more gigantor. Which is kind of sweet when you think about it. What are you, 5'8"? And Larry says he's 5'10", well, 5'9" and some change. I think this is hilarious because according to my trusted source, celebheights.com, Ben Stiller is 5'6". I get it, there's a stigma against short men, especially in Hollywood and especially with leading men, but I don't know, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I mean, I'm in love with... Anyway, speaking of Common Raw, he eats Octavius. So Octavius's track is a smidge different. In the beginning, he hitches a ride in Larry's pocket after the introduction to Custer and everything, then turns around to face Jedediah as he says his line,
"Just stay alive! I will find you!"
Then he flirts with Amelia, then Larry sets him down to go find help, and the whole middle of the movie's the same with him going to the White House lawn and everything, but he does say, what kind of idiot runs this place without a moat? And I thought that was so funny. At the end, he shows up on his squirrel, and Common Raw plucks him up and eats him, not because he would taste good, but because it's just so evil it feels like the right thing to do. Jedediah freaks out and has a vengeance in his eyes, but when Abe Lincoln smashes through the glass, Common Raw coughs him up in surprise. The end. McPhee's track is a little bit different in the script too. At the beginning in the museum, McPhee says, I do love this moment, right before it happens. And Larry's like, what happens right before what? And McPhee says, you know. And Larry's like, no, I don't. And McPhee says, going home, supper, dancing with the stars. What did you think I meant? McPhee is also the one to call Larry in black and white World War II New York, not Nikki. McPhee says, I'm on to you. I know exactly what you're up to. And Larry's like, I highly doubt that. McPhee's just mad because Larry left the giant rope chew toy for Rexy in the museum. While we're in black and white World War II New York, when Larry bumps into Joey Motorola, who is nameless here, he truthfully explains the whole situation, like the future and the magic tablet, but Joey Motorola's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Did you say you were from Brooklyn? And the scene continues on from there. There were a couple sequences in the script that were cut from the movie. The first one, after they visit the bust of Teddy, they go into a larger hall of presidents. It's a bit too long, and it mostly consists of fat jokes about President Taft, and also nobody likes George W. Bush. Like, Amelia's shocked that they let him be president. The other one takes place in the Air and Space Museum. I think it was a last-minute decision to make Abel a nice monkey, because all of the versions I have looked at, Abel steals the tablet, including here. Larry chases Abel into a moon landing exhibit where there's a distinct lack of gravity, so Abel pees at Larry, but he pees up at Larry. Because gravity. I can forgive that though, only because he uses his farts as like a rocket booster, and that's hilarious. And also, after Larry and Amelia leave on the Wright Flyer, he closes the door, rips the button out of the wall with his freaking bare hands, and then flips off the bad guys. God tier. I'm genuinely surprised that they didn't have Dexter or Abel pee on anything throughout the finished movie, though in the script Common Raw does say Dexter peed on him. So, other small things. The gate to the underworld is now called the Gate of Neter Karet. One of Larry's inventions is the leashless dog walker, and in the stage directions, it suggests Larry say one of his lines with the tone of, are you f***ing shitting me? Which once again brings me back to my idea of Night at the Museum, but this time Larry can swear. The script does indeed mention Rebecca. It addresses her absence. Amelia asks Larry if he has a lady friend, and Larry says he did, but then he got busy and she left. Amelia retaliates with, perhaps you didn't give her a reason to stay. Dude, I wish they would have kept this. We already talked about why I don't think Larry and Rebecca were romantic, but regardless, I and many others would have loved at least a brief explanation as to where she went. This also makes me wonder if they intended for Rebecca to be absent from the start, or if it was just a scheduling thing with Carla Gugino. The script ends a smidge differently than the movie. We get to see Larry quit his corporate job, and his assistant is crying, saying he always looked so sharp in that suit, but he says, "It's okay, I got another one. Fits me even better." And we cut to the museum and he's in his guard uniform, and yeah, you get it. We didn't need to see him quit his job, I agree. And that line about the suit, stupid and cheesy, but I gotta say, I do think he's, he looks, snazzy in that, suit of his. Also, Amelia's lookalike approaches Larry instead of the other way around, so it feels less weird. Yay! We end on Brandon seeing the mess at the Smithsonian with Amelia crashed and smiling, and he says there's no way he's cleaning this up. The end. Yeah. Like the first movie, this script had some gems, and it contributed to the lore that I am constantly building upon, and I liked it. Although it does mention that Larry looked after the tablet for 2 years, but this doesn't make sense because in most versions of the movie, it says he was gone for 2 years, but the first movie was in late 2006 and the second movie was in early 2009, so this can't make sense, so we're ignoring it. But anyway, again, just like the first movie, the finished product is so much better. There's quite a few jokes I wish they would have kept, and God, I would kill to have Aquaman-Ra in the movie, but other than that, I'm not really mad about the different trajectory the movie took. I guess the script had good bones, like everything you need to make a good family comedy, but it didn't quite capture the spirit of a Night at the Museum movie quite right. Okay, Junior Novelization, published April 14th, 2009. I loved the writing style. Like, there was a vast improvement from the first book. It felt like it suited the age demographic really well, because yeah, Night at the Museum is a movie for kids. Duh. But it is really a little scary and a little mature. Nothing crazy, but I was born in the year 2000, so I was 6 when this movie came out, and so were many of my peers. I've heard from multiple people that they were really scared of the first movie when they were little, especially of the mummy. So while it can be enjoyed by little kids, I think there's an age where the movie starts to click, I guess. All of this is to say that the Night at the Museum 2 Kronk's New Groove novelization seemed to fit the same age group that the movie was trying to target, whereas the first novelization felt a little young. And oh yeah, it's because it's a different author. Nothing against Leslie Goldman, but Michael Anthony Steele did an excellent job of capturing the charm of the movie. And not only did he capture the charm of the movie, he captured the charm of Dr. McPhee, which is a very hard thing to do in writing. I do not think I can do it justice without rating it to you, so... Oh, and I do want to give a trigger warning. It does briefly mention suicide, so skip to this time if you don't want to hear it. Okay, McPhee placed a hand on Larry's shoulder. "You don't have to justify yourself to me. You became a success. If I were a night guard, I would have to kill myself. I would literally end my life. In fact, right now, at this very moment, I'm getting depressed just thinking of being a night guard." Listen, I know that this is not appropriate, and I know it's not the theme we're going for, but it is so funny, and it is so McPhee. And then, like, in the same breath, he tells Larry that it's been so hard getting someone to replace him. It's just been a bunch of crazy people who say they can't handle the job because the T-Rex comes to life every night. And Larry's like, yeah, that is crazy. And I love the implication that multiple people have said this, and McPhee still just shrugs it off. Insane. I also think the copyright workarounds in this book are so interesting, and I don't really know anything about copyright, so this may sound dumb. Please forgive me. First, the person that's interviewing Larry in the beginning is introduced as the 2-time heavyweight boxing champion of the world. There's no name. Like, was George Foreman just not on the project yet when the book was written? Were they just not allowed to use his name in a written format? Whatever the case, they just repeatedly refer to him as Champ. Sure. They do this little play fight thing, and Larry blocks him with his flashlight, and I think that's just a cute little foreshadowing moment to his fight with Kamen-Ra, and also it ties him back to his night guard roots. They also can't say that they have a meeting with Walmart, so they just keep calling it a business meeting or a big meeting. Like when Amelia stops to dance with the ballerina, Larry rushes them along because he says he's got a business meeting in a couple of hours. I don't know why this makes me laugh so much. Like, a business meeting, how vague, or a big meeting, how ominous. I remember them mentioning in the commentaries that they couldn't use the term National Archives for some reason, even though that's the correct name of it, so they had to use Federal Archives. But in the book, it's still National Archives. They can, however, use the names of Darth Vader and Oscar the Grouch. I have no idea how copyright works. Something fun I adored about the book was that they gave names to all of the unimportant people. Larry's driver? His name is Denny. When Larry pretends to be Brandon, the other security guard asks him if he's going to Scruff's party tonight. Who's Scruff? I don't know, but he sounds cool. And then Amelia's doppelganger at the end is named Tess. I'm so glad somebody thought to give her a name. Actually, though, you can briefly see Larry introduce himself, and then she says her name is Tess. I know Larry's assistant Ed is technically named in the movie, but it's barely mentioned, like super glossed over, blink and you'll miss it.
Ed from work's gonna come by. I thought I told you.
But Ed's got a decent-sized part in the novelization. In addition to his part at the beginning, he shows up at Larry's apartment with notes for the business meeting and then gets mad when Larry has to dip to DC because he literally canceled all of his plans for this.
I just want to focus on this.
Okay.
Just this.
My daughter's birthday, canceled.
And in the end, Larry leaves Ed in charge after he sells his company. Aw. I want to talk about a character that I never thought I'd want to talk about. Abel the Space Monkey. Not only is he super badass in the script, but he has a whole backstory in the novelization. Maybe I would have thought it was stupid if it made its way into the movie, but currently I am thoroughly enjoying it. Okay, so Abel steals the tablet and they go on the same moon chase that they do in the script. But Larry realizes he's not getting through to Abel, so he speaks to him in Capuchin, meaning he makes monkey noises and hand gestures. That part's dumb. What's not dumb is Abel's shocked, so he asks Larry where he learned to speak Capuchin, and Larry says he has a friend back in New York that taught him. Abel's like, I have a brother in New York, but unfortunately we are estranged. What? Like, he has to mean Dexter, right? Right? Like, why doesn't Larry say anything? And just to confirm it, I want to read you this exchange near the end. Abel? Dexter asked in Capuchin. Dexter? Asked Abel. You guys know each other? Asked Larry. Dexter screeched his reply. Indeed, we are brothers, but we are estranged ever since he went into space and decided he was too good for the family. You have never gotten over living in my shadow, banana breath, screeched Abel. That is unkind, squawked Dexter. After a brief slap fight, Larry says, Okay, stop. I know you guys understand me. You are both proud Capuchins. Whether in space or in the jungle, brothers you are. Now how about we focus on slapping the enemy? Brothers you are. Why is this the most interesting thing we'll ever know about these monkeys? Larry's pretty much the same in the book, though during the first act when he's still businessman USA, we see him think fondly of the museum just a little bit more. When his driver reminds him that it's the first of the month, meaning it's his monthly museum visit, Larry puts down his phone and smiles. He puts down his phone. The thing he's been glued to at all times of the day. Additionally, the novelization explains that when he puts on the guard uniform again, a sense of familiarity and comfort washes over him. Like, clearly this is where he belongs. Also, remember in the movie when Larry kisses the nurse to hide from the bad guys, and Amelia calls him a smooth operator? In the novelization, he says, I had to think of something, and Amelia says, well, keep thinking because here they come, as the Egyptian warriors approach them. When I first read this, I sure did think for a split second that Amelia meant he should also kiss the Egyptians. Imagine if that was it. Like, that was the end. Love saves the day. Anyway, Larry also has this bit at the end after he encourages Custer to be a leader. Inspired, Custer runs around giving terrible orders, like telling the squid to pull back, telling the cherubs to play a song, and telling the thinker to play a steady tune on a drum. Larry then has to follow behind him, giving the exact opposite orders, like telling the squid and the thinker to get in there because they're major assets, and telling the cherubs to use their arrows. Custer's just generally more stupid here, and in the script. Like when Sacagawea asks, didn't you lose the Battle of Little Bighorn? Custer says the liberal media blew that way out of proportion. I'm still trying to decide if that's funny or not, but either way, I think the finished movie has a healthy amount of Custer's stupidity, and to add anything else would be overkill.
My hair is currency in certain parts of Europe.
Something that completely escaped my mind until I read it. Why do the villains want the tablet? Kamenev vaguely explained that it would unleash his army of the dead and open a gate to the underworld so that they could all take over the world, but that kinda turned out to be a bust? So why do they still want it? Well, in the novelization, Al Capone asks this question, but Ivan's pretty much realized that this is the thing that brings them to life. He says he's developed a taste for this coming to life stuff, and he'd like to keep it that way. And the other villains pick up what he's laying down, so they continue to corner Larry. A couple of more character things. Jedediah has some silly lines that I love, like, I'm nothing more than a tiny hill of beans in this great land of ours. And referring to his speech to Octavius from the Hourglass, he calls it both manly and touching. Hey, this guy gets it. Also, him and Octavius ride into battle on the squirrel together. Come on! Al Capone is obsessed with killing people throughout the whole story, and he's described as having thick lips. Common Raw says, Mother always gave Achman Ra the best of everything. Why he doesn't refer to his father, the world may never know. The same height comparison thing that happens with Napoleon in the script also happens here, but when Larry and Amelia bolt and then get caught again, Napoleon says that that was part of his plan all along. Which kind of makes sense, because in the movie, Napoleon says something was his plan. It was a brilliant plan.
C'est pas une question de taille. It's not about hate or something else. It's a plan. It's a brilliant plan.
Ah, so it was a plan.
Snazzy maneuver, Emperor.
Because I never understood anything about a plan or even what he was saying, and all I'm saying is that at least it makes sense in this context. The Teddy bust has some different lines, including the one that's in the script and in the gag reel about, oh, the secret to happiness, having a body. The novel ends nicely in a similar enough way to the movie, but the last godforsaken line, I swear. Anything could happen during a night at the museum. But seriously, I have very minimal gripes with the novelization. The writing is good and thoughtful, and the new details and jokes and bits of characterization add to the story. Like, it's not distracting or off-putting at all. I will say, the pictures in the middle of the book. Whoever captioned them, I think they briefly watched the movie once. This one says, "Where are we? They're still in the Museum of Natural History." Or the "Tick-tock, Mr. Daly, your hour has begun" is placed way too early in the sequence of events. Or having Abel snatch the tablet. But yeah, the fact that the pictures are slightly wrong, that's a stupid complaint for me to have. What I will allow myself to complain about is the cover. Who is this? For reference, this is the movie cover. What? Overall, good book. Very pleased. And it makes me excited to read the author's spin-off books about Nikki and reread the third novelization because he did that one too. Hey, there's another A Night at the Museum book by Milan Trank. It was published on March 19th, 2013, so this was way after the first one. I debated putting it in here because it has nothing to do with the Smithsonian, and it came out 4 years after the movie did, but a sequel's a sequel, so I figured I'd at least mention it. It starts off with Larry taking a bath and relaxing. That is until he realizes he has to get to work like now. He rushes out the door past his wife and daughter, Melissa, and makes it to the museum just in time. The chief, still being the dick that he is, assigns Larry to the ocean exhibit, since the dinosaur exhibit seemed to give him so much trouble last time. Larry relaxes and closes his eyes for a minute. He then experiences something that we all experience, which is, oh no, did I leave the faucet on? Except in this case, he did. He receives a call from his daughter Melissa, saying that New York City is completely flooded. He rushes to close the window, but the blue whale and octopus have escaped. He notices his daughter paddling up on a mailbox to him, but he loses her once the blue whale and octopus dislodge the museum from its foundations and push it towards Central Park. A friendly orca suggests that maybe Melissa is with the blue whale and octopus, so Larry dives down and he finds her. They run into a fish who says something along the lines of, "Why is everybody coming back to the ocean? Is land no fun anymore? I remember when this dry land craze started 400 million years ago." The fish is the funniest character in the whole book. Larry's freaking out because it's almost opening time for the museum, but Melissa suggests maybe just ask them nicely to return and offer them a reward. He does that. It works. They swim back to the apartment to turn off the faucet, and the city drains. Melissa asks what Larry told them, and he says that he told them that this is nothing compared to what he has planned for tomorrow night. The end, I think. I don't know, I didn't want to buy the book, so my only resource was a child reading it on YouTube, and we also got a couple of zoomed in pictures. 'Twasn't the most bearable form of consumption, but it'll do. The book is cute. I'll say it. I mean, who wouldn't capitalize off of the success of their first book and also off of the success of the 2 movies based off of it? So, like, I get it. But the book doesn't really offer anything new. The first one explained why guards nap. The second one was just another adventure, this time in the water. And there's nothing wrong with that. I want to emphasize that this was a good time, minus this guy. I just don't think that there's much to be taken from it. Besides the fact that Larry has a daughter now. Oh, and did you know that the blue whale and octopus from this book are actually Disney's first gay couple? You know what time it is, it's DVD extras time. And oh boy, are there a lot of them. The first movie had your standard deleted scenes and commentaries. Night at the Museum 2, The Squeakquel has plenty more, so buckle up. Our first deleted scene is an extended Brundon sequence. Some may call it annoying, but I call it comedy gold.
Why are you doing this? Because I don't like you. I saw you and I was like, oh my gosh, I would not like that guy socially. He makes me angry.
Obviously, I agree with Sean Levy and probably most people on the planet that it couldn't have all stayed in the movie, and I think they did a good job trimming it down. But it was super fun to watch Ben Stiller and Jonah Hill go at it for 5.5 minutes.
Well, I prefer the Maglite LED myself, but you know, that's just me.
I was way into that back in kindergarten.
Then I got to first grade and I was like, maybe I should try an adult flashlight.
And because I can, I'm counting it as a long bit. I mean, the first one was so long that it should have been counted as 2 anyway, so. The next few deleted scenes are about the bad guys. As I mentioned, Sean Levy said people were eager to get back to the Larry Amelia plotline, so they couldn't rely too heavily on the comedic villains. But this stuff is so good. The second deleted scene has the bad guys playing Twister to divide up the world, which is interesting commentary all on its own, but we don't have time to get into that. Common Raw asks why Mr. Capone doesn't want to play, but Al's a little preoccupied having a tantrum because he found out he got for tax evasion.
What kind of punk gets pinched for tax evasion?
He asks if they heard about this, and Ivan's like,
I had heard the rumor.
Then the older Al Capone in the poster tells young Al Capone to scram. The third deleted scene is just an awkward, quick elevator scene with all of our villains and their armies piled into an elevator with elevator music. That's it. The next scene is one from the script where Larry suggests they take the moon rover out of air and space, and Amelia accuses him of being afraid of flying.
No, I'm not scared.
I'm scared. You're a bit of a fraidy cat.
I'm not afraid. I'm not a scaredy cat.
He's just afraid to fly, you know, with her because she's famous for getting lost. She says he's the one who's lost, etc., etc. Levy explains that the theme was already well established at this point, and since it's back to back with another serious Larry Amelia scene, we start to lose the urgency of the hourglass. The fifth scene brings us back to our villains in air and space. Al Capone says it's time to paint the town red, and he pulls out his gun, pretending to shoot it and making bullet noises.
Need something with a little more gusto? Okay. You hang on the French toast and you squeeze it tight. Here we go.
Napoleon and Ivan are like, dude, clearly thinking he's stupid, which makes Al Capone annoyed because now he has to take the time to explain that every time he goes, guh, that's a bullet.
Bullet, 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 bullet.
This is so unbelievably funny, but again, I get why it was cut. Our last scene on the DVD version is an alternate ending. Achman-Ra's explaining his tablet to the tour group, and after the girls ask their questions, another person has a question. It's Gus, the old guard. He asks what happens to this thing after closing, and Achman-Ra, with a suspicious look and tone of voice, assures him it's in a safe place. Reginald says,
Hush now, little one. Hush.
And Cecil says,
It ain't over till it's over, boys. Not over till it's over.
oh. Levy says they're beloved actors, so they have to make a cameo, but it didn't really fit, blah, blah, blah. I agree. But the implications! Like, it's probably likely that Achman-Ra never saw Reginald or Gus's faces and only briefly saw Cecil's. It's not until he hears their voices that he starts to recognize, oh, I know these guys. These are horrible guys. And I think that's so interesting, but I see why it doesn't fit. Anyway. Now we'll move on to the Blu-ray exclusive deleted scenes, which again has a lot of excellent villain stuff. Additionally, I have no idea how to get the Blu-ray scenes onto my laptop, so I am going to do my absolute most mediocre impressions. Overpriced accents and dialects for stage and screen book, don't fail me now. I'm sorry. Hey, remember Ed, played by Ed Helms, and how he has a bigger part in the novelization? Yeah, well, one of those scenes is here. On the Blu-ray, which I think is funny because they felt really bad for cutting him out of the first one and restricting him only to a deleted scene.
You're the vibe guy.
But then for the second one, they cut a lot of his stuff and restricted him to Blu-ray exclusive deleted scenes. But it's good. It's just the scene where he shows up to Larry's apartment ready to work, but Larry's dipping to DC. It heroically sets up going to Washington, as Levy says, but it's not necessary. The next scene is a mega extended scene of Common-Raw introducing the villains, and it's so good. Remember in the novelization how Al Capone's obsessed with killing? Yeah, we see that a lot in these scenes, especially here. Plus, Ivan gets a lot more. Like, he continues to express why he wasn't terrible, and Napoleon's like, didn't you kill your son? And Ivan says, you say tomato, I say I will tear your head off, put it in a bowl of borscht, and sip it very slowly. Napoleon gives him the watch it finger, and Al Capone's like, what the f***? Levy didn't have anything new to say here, except for the reason that they eventually chose to make the gangsters black and white and add a bunch of CGI animals is because it felt too actors running around in costumes. Which I thought made sense, because if you stare at colorized Al Capone too long, it messes with something in your head. The next scene is also a mega extended scene, where Common-Raw can't figure out the combination because of his parents, and this leads to a long Ivan bit. Al Capone brings up killing, Ivan explains the wonders of reading, and Common Ra asks Ivan to torture the combination out of Larry. Ivan takes Larry back out of sight, but he's way more concerned about his reputation, asking Larry what he thinks when he hears the name Ivan the Terrible. Larry eventually says, scary murdering guy who murdered his son, and Ivan freaks out, saying, I will carve out your intestines and knit them into an intestine sweater vest. Larry's like, yeah, see that right there? When you do, that's not... If you don't want to put out that vibe,
I'm a vibe guy.
Maybe you shouldn't say things like that. This goes on forever until Larry gets Ivan to say, tell me the combination or I will be very disappointed in you. Larry's like, yeah, that's better, but I don't know the combination. This scene was so long, but so funny, and again, it's a pacing thing. This is right where the real stakes are established, so you can't kill it immediately with an unimportant scene, but it does showcase Christopher Guest very well. It also showcases how smart Larry is. He recognizes Ivan's need to be seen as a good guy, and he legitimately works with him on that, also knowing that this will give him time to think and talk his way out of the situation. If he calms Ivan down and gets him to realize that violence is the reason he's viewed as terrible, he can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Then we've got an extended scene where Common Ra sees Larry and Amelia trying to escape, and he sends everyone to kill them. Al Capone's like, so here I go, on my path, and I just want to stop for 1 second to be completely clear. When you say whatever it takes, does that in fact mean? And Common Ra's like, yes, it is now the killing time, and Al Capone's like, enough said. He passes by a gangster movie playing by his exhibit, and he admires it, saying that's how he wants to go out. And believe it or not, the gangster in the movie is Sean Levy with a mustache, which I missed the first time I watched that. Levy said he wanted to play with violence in relation to Al Capone's character. He doesn't actually know how to be violent, all he's seen is movies, so he models himself after that. This would also tie into the other deleted scene where he shoots fake bullets. By just taking the time to explain this to us, Levy argued that it was too deep for such a small character, but I disagree. How far are we into this video? How much have I analyzed? I can agree that it would take up too much time, but I don't think it's too deep at all. It just adds another interesting layer to an already interesting character. The next scene is an extended scene in the crate with Custer. It starts with a really crappy yet terrifyingly incomplete edit of Dexter's eye peeking through the crate hole. He whispers to a caveman who whispers to Attila, etc, etc, etc. The guards have left their post. Sacagawea tells Custer, who now announces his improved battle plan. He riffs a lot more and pretends to stab a Hun and then lick the sword, and Sacagawea is like, didn't you lose super badly at the Battle of Little Bighorn? And then he's clearly super annoyed that he has to explain himself. I think it showcases Bill Hader's improv and comedic chops very well, but too bad I hate Custer. Glad it was cut. The last deleted scene on the Blu-ray is unfortunately another extended Custer scene where he's hiding behind the pile of gold and Larry gives him a pep talk. It's just a lot of bragging and riffing, and it's fine. As with most of these deleted scenes, it was an inconsequential comedic scene in the middle of a high-stakes situation, so it needed to be pulled out. The end.
I hope that they're inspired to learn more. And above all, I hope that the main theme, which is that kind of maybe there's no aspiration more important than to find something you love doing. And to kind of remember that it's a blessing to get to go to work every day and love what you're doing.
Starting off with the director's commentary from our beloved Sean Levy. It was pretty similar to the first one. A lot of overall production information, a lot of fun facts, and a lot of praise and love. It was clear from the start that he and Ben Stiller did not want to make a sequel just to make a sequel. There was plenty of studio interest because of the success of the first one, but they didn't want to say or do anything until they had a story worth telling. A story, for instance, about a man who found success but lost joy. Yes, this movie was absolutely going to be bigger. Be it the cast, the characters, the setting, the story. Like, Oscar the Grouch and Darth Vader were written into the original script, but they doubt they'd get the rights to do that, but they got them. And the studio even encouraged them to go all out. Normally they're concerned with the money aspect, but they said no, this is gonna be good and big, and the visual effects are going to be insane. Don't hold back. Which is so nice to hear. So the movie is bigger in every sense of the word, but the theme still had to be important. It still had to be grounded. Like, Levy was very meticulous with the script. Like, he spent a year on the script alone and then 6 months storyboarding. He mentioned that there was a strong urge to get right to the Smithsonian because that's where the meat and the action is. But they intentionally kept the first act long, just like the first movie, so that we get invested in the characters and so that they can pull off an emotional, spectacular third act. For instance, the McPhee scenes. Are they important? No, but the first time we see him in the movie, we can tell that despite his seeming inability to express emotions, he's hurt. He's sad to see the exhibits go.
It's done. They leave tomorrow morning. It's over.
Because at the end, we can see that he's so happy everything is back to almost normal. He loves Larry, even if he can't express it.
As night guards go, you're, well, the best.
Levy specifically says the movie doesn't need the McPhee scene at the end, but it's better for it. This movie is also stacked full of homages, some of which I didn't even notice, because I don't watch a lot of movies, in case you can't tell. Octavius says, "Just stay alive, I will find you," before he jumps off a ledge. This is a reference to The Last of the Mohicans.
Stay alive, no matter what occurs. I will find you.
Which Levy says nobody gets. I mean, I didn't. I will say it felt like a reference to something, I just didn't know what. Also, gay, what the f***? When Octavius encounters the squirrel, he tells himself to stay still because they can sense movement. This is a little reference to the T-Rex in Jurassic Park.
Keep absolutely still. This vision's based on movement.
They got freaking Clint Howard to be a mission control guy in the Air and Space Museum. A guy who has played a guy in Mission Control a couple of other times, including in Apollo 13, so that's neat. As Larry and Amelia fly out of Air and Space on the Wright Flyer, Abel holds up some green flares, which is a reference to The Rock, a Michael Bay film.
I already dropped them.
Levy admits that he loves Michael Bay films, which is fine, sure, but then he goes on to say that his shit is slick as hell. Can he say that in a... Never mind. The miniatures running around and stabbing people's feet, that's an homage to 300. And then finally, the one we've talked about quite a bit. Larry and Kamen Ra's final battle being an homage to the Luke Vader fight in Return of the Jedi. I'm sure there are plenty of other references and such, but those are just the ones Levy mentioned in the commentary. As with the last commentary, there was plenty of praise to go around, including the cast, the crew, everyone. Oh, and especially the production designer, Claude Perret. Like, this film is gorgeous, and there's such a warm feel, and the sets are massive and insane, so yeah. As always, Levy loves his cast, especially Ben Stiller, who, unrelated, he says does better with dialogue, not monologues. Yeah, no, I think that's everyone. Nobody likes doing monologues. I only mention this because in the first movie, he said that Ben Stiller's better at reacting to real things, and once again, I said, yeah, no, that's pretty much everyone. Anyway, the cast brought forward a lot of ideas on top of the improv too. For example, you remember the Joey Motorola scene that caused my life to descend into a living hell?
Joey Motorola, you get down here for supper right now.
I said 1 second, Mike. I really think I'm onto something here.
That was just a little idea from Ben Stiller and Robin Williams. Like, it was Ben Stiller's idea for him to be named Joey Motorola, and then it was Robin Williams' idea for that to be revealed in a mid-credits scene. These two men are responsible for ruining my life. So, Ben Stiller suggested the idea of kissing the nurse to avoid the notice of the Egyptians. Nice one, Ben. Also, apparently Owen Wilson just rewrote the hourglass scene with Steve Coogan right before shooting it. What? Do they know what they did? Did they know what they were doing? Was it like... I mean, I'm just baffled. So lots of contributions from the cast. And I remember Levy saying that sometimes you just have to put something in the movie because you find it funny, and, you can tell.
Do not touch it.
Don't touch me.
Do not
Don't touch me.
I'll touch you with my flashlight all day.
No,
I
the
will
flashlight
literally
is meant to illuminate.
I will literally rent a camper and we will drive across America with my flashlight on your chest.
It's not bad or anything, but the movie has points where you can tell the actors are just trying to make each other laugh.
If you touch that again, I shall kill you right now. Okay. Do not touch this. This is a no touching zone.
Good. Well then,
oh my God.
Again, not a bad thing, at least to me, because it makes me laugh too, and isn't that all that matters? A few other things. Mr. Levy said, when in doubt, cut to the monkey. No! That is incorrect. He also said that he can smell trailer shots, which I think is an interesting talent to have. Like the part where Custer screams yeehaw and then bonks his head on a beam and falls? Trailer shot. The teenagers screaming when Rexy roars at them? Trailer shot. Some other small fun facts. Jimmy jacked is a word that Sean Levy and his wife made up.
Crime me, we're Jimmy jacked.
Which means I'm going to start using it in real life soon. Levy wrote a couple of Abraham Lincoln's lines about the positive direction of our nation after Obama was elected.
These are promising days indeed.
The Jonas Brothers wrote their credit song specifically for the movie, and Levy was listening to Coldplay while filming the Amelia doppelganger scene at the end, which makes me laugh, and I don't know why. Something that Levy said that really struck me was, This is probably only interesting to me, not to you. You being the viewer. Sir, no. No. I'm watching this for a reason. I am hanging on to every word you say. It is interesting. It is. I've said it once and I'll say it again. I love listening to him because you can tell he really loves making these movies. He said that Night at the Museum and its sequel made him really appreciate the challenge of making these movies and making them right. And you can tell. It's a positive, optimistic franchise that's weird and surreal, but it's so grounded in real characters with real motivations and lives that you forget an Egyptian non-pharaoh working with a Russian czar, a French emperor, and a 1920s gangster is a little weird. I mean, look at this shot.
We are not going to attack, right? No!
This is weird, but at the same time, it's not. They just let their unconscious imagination flow, and as long as they worked on making a good story, they could do pretty much anything.
Welcome to your exclusive Comedy Central behind-the-scenes tour of the set and the cast of Night at the Museum 2, Battle of the Smithsonian.
The screenwriter's commentary opened with our two screenwriters, Thomas Lennon and Robert Ben-Garant, singing along horribly to the opening 20th Century Fox theme, and I knew exactly what I was in for and that it was exactly what I needed in that moment. They said hello in general, and then hello to the millionaires watching on Blu-ray, which gave me whiplash because I forget that this is 2009. Another thing that gave me whiplash is when they talked about how nice and funny Patrick Gallagher is, the guy who plays Attila. They mentioned he's on this new show called Glee. This new show called Glee. As if Glee hasn't existed since the very beginning of time. What? And then there's a trailer for Glee on the DVD.
Are you ready for Glee?
You betcha.
Glee, Wednesdays at 9, 8 Central on Fox.
What? Anyway, remember last time when they ended their commentary with, if you watched all of this, go outside. Yeah, no, they began this commentary with that. Like, before you watch this, go outside, get some fresh air, go meet a girl, go have a day out in the sun, get some exercise, you're inside too much, take a long look in the mirror, go read a book. Like, I'm trying to think of a bigger waste of your time than watching Hollywood screenwriters watch their own movie. In the last movie, I was shocked that they simultaneously read and destroyed my life like that. This time, I was resigned. Like, yeah, that's me, baby. Let's get on with it. They were in the movie this time. They played the Wright brothers. So you know they milked that for all it was worth. Like, they stole the show, etc., etc. One of them would bite into their ice cream sandwich they were holding at the end of every take, but it added a couple seconds to the movie that weren't needed, so it never made it in. Rest in peace. Oh, and don't worry, these guys are still in love with Ben Stiller. They recommended buying the Ben Stiller show on DVD because it's good and funny. And yeah, I believe them, but I'm good. They also said Ben Stiller and Hank Azaria are ripped. Like, they are the strong guys in comedy, so. They also like Ricky Gervais. They think he's hilarious. And I mean, me too.
Long time buried, baby. Coming back woollier. This time is personal.
They say the only person who finds Ricky Gervais funnier, though, is Ricky Gervais. Which is true, but also they haven't met my mother. And oh, the questions these guys had about the lore in their own movie. Once again, may I refer you to the lore section of my previous video and the updated lore section in this video. Why doesn't the teddy outside the museum come to life? One of them asked. The other responds with, I also wondered that. They agreed that the tablet affects everything under one roof and that Teddy is outside, but they probably should have talked about it beforehand. Yeah, I agree, guys. Another question was, why is the tablet so light? And they said that it's just balsa wood and has like a gold coat. Or everyone's just insanely ripped. Another question, why stop at 3.14159.265? The answer, good question. Another question, will the paintings go back at sunrise? A valid question that they didn't answer, so that one's up to me, I guess. Something they pointed out was that there's this whole thing about Larry getting a key card, but then he uses it only like twice. Otherwise, he can just open doors, which raises a few questions. One of which is, does the Smithsonian lock their doors? So they encourage the viewer, next time they're at the Smithsonian at night, just give the handle a little jiggle, see if it opens. One of them says they'd go so far as to say there's probably another night guard at the museum at night, but the other says the government doesn't have that kind of money. Another thing, Lennon and Garant are so aware that there are continuity errors and historical inaccuracies. It's just movie magic, baby. They also don't mind when the actors change the script, because a lot of the time it's funny and it works. Like, they think the funniest scene in the whole movie is the don't cross this line bit with Larry and Common Ra.
Don't
cross this line with your hand.
But they only wrote the first few lines of it. Like, the rest was improv, and they think that's dope. A few things they mentioned that were originally supposed to happen but were cut for some reason or another. Richard III was supposed to be on the villain dream team, and he would have soliloquies to the camera, and people would be like, who are you talking to? I'm sad this didn't happen. Like, this bit always gets me. They at one point had a cartoon 1950s style nuclear atom named Adam, and the cherubs were originally written as if they were to be played by the guys from The Sopranos, like grumpy Italians. I'm torn because I love a good Mamma Mia, Scorreggia, Mastaccioli as much as the next guy, perhaps more than the next guy. But the Jonas Brothers playing the cherubs? To me, this is a fixed point in history, or at least an important point. The Jonas Brothers playing the cherubs feels right in a cosmic sense. It's the reason our world is in the exact timeline that it's in today, and I can't really explain it, and no, I will not be taking questions. Also, them doing this?
Yeah, she's more than a woman. Yeah, more than a woman. Yo, show me what you got, Night Guard!
Feels unapologetically 2009, and it will be used to help historians understand our culture from that decade. And get this, black and white World War II New York was supposed to have a musical number. I get why they didn't do it, but God, do I want it. Something that cannot go unmentioned is during the hourglass scene, the screenwriters mention how much they love Jedediah and Octavius' relationship. Like, Jedediah and Octavius truly love each other. As friends. With an intensity. And I cannot emphasize how pregnant the pause was before they said, as friends. Like, they were reaching to find that word. Just admit it, dude. A massive chunk of the movie was spent talking about their idea for Night at the Museum 3. It's Larry, McPhee, and Dexter taking a woolly mammoth in a big rig to Georgia. It's an action-packed adventure. They pick up Shania Twain, there's a Canadian Mountie after them, and the bridge is out, so they have to jump the big rig.
The bridge is out.
I know this is completely a joke, but I crave Night at the Museum content, and this legitimately sounds excellent, though maybe not on theme. It's really sad, though, because they close out the commentary with, we'll have all the facts about woolly mammoths, hot rods, and big rigs for Night at the Museum 3. But they didn't do Night at the Museum 3. Night at the Museum 3 happened without them. How sad. Also, they're skipping Night at the Museum 4, and Night at the Museum 5 is going to be a cloned army of frogs above the Natural History Museum. Lennon and Garant's commentary was really fun to listen to this time around. Not that it wasn't last time, but I feel like they had a lot more to say, and their love for these movies really shines through on this one. Like, they even said that they were so excited at the prospect of getting to work with art coming to life. When they complimented themselves or the movie, it was in a way that said, wow, we have an excellent team that made an excellent product. Like, how many movies have a throwaway pterodactyl shot? Also, Common Ra's pile of loot was actually on display at the Smithsonian for a bit. Sorry, this section was so chaotic, but honestly, so was the commentary, so can you blame me? Like I mentioned, the DVD is stacked full of other features, but I'm gonna lump them into one section because there's not really much to them. The behind the scenes didn't have too much to offer, it was mostly stuff that was already said or known, and it was a lot of brief comments from a lot of different people. Like Bill Hader, who was nervous about riding a horse, and then the horse sensed that he was nervous and got nervous, which made him nervous, which made the horse nervous, which made him nervous, which made... I cannot blame him though, because I too am scared of horses.
Anytime the horse would move, these three guys would go, whoa, 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 just relax, whoa. Whoa, 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 whoa.
I thought it was neat that it was John Bernthal as Al Capone, pre-The Walking Dead, and Elaine Chabot's kids forced him to take this role as Napoleon. Everyone thought the first movie was gonna tank, so this was a delightful surprise. And everyone was excited that these movies actually boosted interest in history. It was a lot less lonely than the first one, because Ben Stiller, instead of running around by himself, got to run around with a bunch of other people. And that's pretty much it. The gag reel was funny. It's a gag reel full of actors that I like from a movie that I like. What can I say? Ricky Gervais did a cowboy accent that absolutely threw me for a loop.
Howdly doodly, ladies and gentlemen in charge of museums. My name's Larry Daly. Come here to save the day.
Robin Williams couldn't seem to make it through the tablet translation scene for whatever reason.
Oh, that's a simple one. Bird. Sorry. Man with the spear, sideways fish. Man with the spear tried to trap a bird with a fish. And the beetle is there. I'll tell you the key to happiness. Being able to finish this scene.
And hearing these people swear once again reinforces my idea of Night at the Museum, but this time, Larry can swear. Finding Pharaoh, both words spelled with a PH, is a short bit on finding Cobb and Ra's accent, because they got Hank Azaria, so of course they had to try a billion different accents, ranging from Grand British to Deep South to Cockney to Boris Karloff.
He who makes the crocodile tremble in fear.
Cherub Boot Camp was pointless, but it was so silly and enjoyable. It was Sean Levy, mockumentary style, pretending to be a horrible, mean director, and he was putting the Jonas Brothers through a boot camp to train as cherubs. They had to fly, shoot arrows, play the harp, and do trust falls. My favorite quotes were,
"Playing a cherub for me was like unleashing a caged tiger. Except the cage was a museum, and the tiger was a naked marble baby."
And about Sean Levy,
you know, they say like still waters run deep. With Sean, it's like choppy waters are extremely shallow and there's nothing to them.
Also, Joe had to go sit in the corner in timeout. A lot.
Go to your creative corner. What's going on here? Where are you going? Corner, Joe! Wow, Joe, corner again. You think? Gratifying creative
Also, the feature ended with an image for their new album, Lines, Vines, and Trying Times, flashing across a dead silent screen as a promo. How fitting. So directing 201, get it? 201? Because it's the sequel? The second movie?
Get it?
Is just us following Sean Levy around for a day of filming. And it's like, serious. Not serious, but every other feature on this DVD is some sort of bit, and this is just not. I was waiting for the bit to drop the whole time, and it never came, which is not bad or anything. It was interesting watching them film the Jedediah and Octavia scenes, particularly the 300 sequence where they're stabbing feet, but that's really all we get to see. Caveman Conversations is an interview with 3 cavemen from the movie, Luke, Hendrik, and O. They were asked questions, they grunted their responses, there was no translation, and it was very off-putting to stare at them for more than 1 minute. Museum Magic, Entering the World of Photograph, was about the making of black and white World War II New York. I was beyond terrified that it would be more about how pictures worked and that it would smash my lord to bits and spit on it. But it was just about the set and effects and stuff like that. It was filmed in a Vancouver parking lot, and they didn't have to build a ton of set or hire a lot of extras. A lot of it was digital. Pretty neat. Secret Doors and Scientists is a behind the scenes at the American Museum of Natural History. It was a lot of facts about Easter Island heads, the Hall of African Mammals, conservation, the Hall of Human Origins, fish, dinosaurs, Neil deGrasse Tyson talking about astronomy, and then it ended with a brief conversation with the actual night watchman of the museum, Gary. Plus, everyone at the museum thought it was cool that the movie boosted interest in the museum. Show Me the Monkeys is a series of videos that add up to 18 minutes. They're about Crystal and Squirt, the 2 monkey actors, and the bits are bad and dumb, and it's just pretending that they're divas or whatever. There was some interesting stuff about what it's like to work with a monkey, but stuff that you can probably figure out on your own. What stood out to me was Robin Williams talking about working with Crystal, but using the pronoun he, then correcting himself, saying Crystal's a girl. Then he says, transgender monkey work is always great to see in film. Funny, sure, but it gave me whiplash because seeing this in a 2009 family comedy DVD just felt too out of place. But hey. Gangster Levy is just the small clip they filmed for Al Capone to watch in his display. They explained that they couldn't find a good, old, authentic gangster movie with a slow-mo gunshot, so they made their own. And it's silly. There were 2 Fox features, one called Making a Scene, which was vague information we already know about the making of the Air and Space Museum scenes. The other was called World Premiere, where they go to the world premiere of the movie at the Smithsonian and interview the cast and crew a little bit. That's all the DVD extras. There was a code in here that lets you access trivia, but that code no longer works, so I guess I'll die. Unless it's the same thing as the trivia already pre-built onto the DVD, which I forgot to mention earlier, but essentially it's just the movie in trivia mode, so it'll show some historical questions up here, and then when you see that thing on the screen, you press a button. And then whenever you get a certain amount right, it plays a fun little animation of a character. That's it. Okay, so I found a Borders exclusive Night at the Museum DVD with a bunch of extra features on it that we obviously weren't able to cover in the first video. I'm going to briefly go over them right now. If you want more in-depth stuff later, let me know. But for now, as Cecil says, I think that it's best that we just keep
moving on.
Navigating the DVD extras screen was so fun. It takes you around the museum, like the loading dock is where the deleted scenes are, and the security office is where stuff about the costumes is, and I thought that was pretty fun. Bringing the museum to life opened with Larry saying, you know how they say in certain museums history comes alive? Well, in this museum it does. Except the way he says it here is not the same way he says it in the movie. Like, it feels like this was shot specifically for the trailer.
This is gonna sound crazy. You know how they say in certain museums history comes alive? In this museum, It actually does.
Anyway, it's a lot about them animating Rexy and the CGI and everything and how nothing was really there, and that's about it. Directing 101 was about how directing is how big of a fool you're willing to make of yourself off camera, and then it was a montage of Sean Levy making a fool of himself off camera. The blooper reel was good and funny. Yay!
How's it going?
Good.
Monkey Business is about working with monkeys and how the movie works really well because it's a real monkey. They did CGI for a lot of the animals, which makes sense, but Dexter had to be real to establish that relationship with Larry, and I agree. Comedy Central's real comedy, Night at the Museum, was Patton Oswalt interviewing a bunch of people around the set and asking them pretty simple questions. Though a lot of the questions were adult in nature, either being sexual or about drugs or stuff like that. Some of them were funny, some of them were not.
Do you want people to come?
I do want people.
Not literally.
What the hell?
Though Mizuho Peck does say that she thinks Teddy was stalking Sacagawea in the beginning, and obviously he wins her over, but like, I'm glad somebody acknowledges this. Building the museum is just showing us the set and how it works and all the little tricks built into it, and then they covered building the ocean life exhibit for that one shot with Cecil, but like, it's so gorgeous and it pays off so well despite the immense amount of work that went into it for one shot. Historical Threads, The Costumes of Night at the Museum, is, believe it or not, about the costumes in Night at the Museum by Renee April. She wanted it to be a mix of historical accuracy, but with twists that made it feel cinematically fun and eye-catching on a movie screen, and she wanted to make it look like what we would expect those characters to wear. The Director's Vision Comes Alive, a storyboard comparison with intro by Sean Levy. This literally showed us a storyboard comparison, showing us the storyboard, and then showing us how the scene panned out. And then the infamous Rexy computer game that nobody can play. There is a video of it somewhere that I will be showing probably right now, but I do think it's funny. It says it only works on Windows 98 or higher, or Internet Explorer 4.0 or higher, so. Making of Night at the Museum is all stuff that we know or was already said, and a few interviews with the cast. Fox Movie Channel Presents Making a Scene is about CGI and acting with it, and then they showed us editor's cuts without any of the effects, and it's so funny because it is Ben Stiller fearing for his life, and there's nothing there. But there is a clip of Larry opening the door to the ocean life exhibit with the whale, and we have not seen this before. I don't know what happened or where it came from. Fox Movie Channel Presents Life After Film School is a conversation between 3 students and Sean Levy. He answered a lot of their questions about the film industry and gave a lot of advice about being a director. He talked a lot about how great movie theaters are and how magical they are, and my first thought was, he would have an aneurysm if he saw what today looked like. He's still alive, moron! Also, the students felt like robots. There was no way they were real people. And that's it, besides these super cool flashcards that came with the DVD. The end. First, I physically do not have the time or energy to recap the lore from the last video, so if you want to know the basics, go ahead and check out that one first. Second, most of my updates are going to be regarding pictures, whether that be photos, paintings, etc., because this can get complex and frustrating, and like every time I answer a question, 5 more pop up. It's like the Hydra, I swear to God. As we know, pictures are different dimensions. So, let's address the question from the literal screenwriters. Do pictures go back at sunrise? Short answer, yes. But you know I'm about to give a long answer. Though pictures are alternate dimensions, they're like pocket dimensions or offshoots of our dimension. I don't actually understand what real pocket dimensions are. I'm sorry if I chose the wrong name. So theoretically, you could get clumps of dimensions. Because paintings can exist within paintings, there could be a whole network of dimensions, a web. And this is still a work in progress theory though, so bear with me. Those dimensions that have a tablet are prime dimensions, and those that are connected to the one with the tablet are pocket dimensions of the one with the tablet and will follow the tablet dimensions rules. Because of this, no 2 prime dimensions can be connected by photo or painting or whatever, which isn't a stretch. If a painting is going in a museum, it's unlikely that it was painted of a world that has a tablet. And pictures can't just be other rooms in the museum that connect via tablet portal because there's literally not room in the museum for that. They have to be portals to other worlds. These dimensions, though created by an artist, photographer, etc., aren't really dimensions until they're activated by the tablet. tablet. Like they exist in stasis until the tablet does its thing. Their laws of existence are under the jurisdiction of the tablet, meaning they're under the jurisdiction of Khonshu. So these paintings and photos are technically exhibits themselves, but everybody in it is its own exhibit too. Like they exist only because of the tablet/Khonshu. That was a lot of words to say that they were brought to life the same way regular exhibits are brought to life, so they exist under the same set of rules. The tablet prioritizes self-preservation, and just like with the regular exhibits, the best way to achieve this is to bring them back to ground zero come morning. Joey Motorola follows the same rules as Teddy Roosevelt. The nurse who comes to life in the photo has the same drives and personality traits of the nurse whose photo was taken. Everybody and everything will go back to their positions at sunrise. Creepy, you may say, for a whole picture to do so, but it's just a normal part of their world, like gravity or breathing, so they don't think it's weird. The same way they don't think it's weird that they exist in the same day over and over again. The people or animals or whatever themselves don't exist in a time loop, like they have free-ish will to go about their day, but in the black and white World War II New York photo, it will always be August 14th, 1945. Extremely off topic, but it would be so funny if Larry's phone only got reception here and not in the stairwell because it's a Motorola.
4 bars in 1945. Hello?
I have no way to prove that, and I don't care enough to research exactly what phone he has, and I know it's not true, but it would be silly. That's all I'm saying, is it would be...
Twould be silly.
Anyway, the sunrise of our dimension is also the sunrise of the pocket dimension. What? Let's back it up. The movie makes it pretty clear that the sun and moon dictate when the exhibits come to life, but they mostly exist in New York, and it gets dark pretty early there in the winter, so if that were true, the exhibits would come to life before closing. That's why I think coming to life and uncoming to life are actually dictated by a certain time relative to where the tablet is. And the tablet isn't aware of time zones, but it collects or senses an average sunrise and sunset time throughout the year from wherever it is, through the position of the planets and the stars and stuff. I don't know, I got a C in astronomy. So while the time of day dictates when they come to life, the sun itself can turn an exhibit to dust. So in a very general sense, time is responsible for life, and the sun is responsible for death. What does this have to do with pictures? Well, we see Amelia and the Egyptians and everyone in the broad daylight of black and white World War II New York, but the sunlight is clearly not turning them to dust. So that means each of these pocket dimensions has a metaphorical sunrise in a sense. Like, yeah, the sun is technically up in the photo, but because it's an offshoot of our dimension, it goes by our sunrise and our time schedule, and brief spoilers for Night at the Museum 4 incoming. The painting of Egypt that they go through is still technically not our world, though it's very similar to ours during that time period, and their physical sunrise just happens to sync up with our physical sunrise. What bothered me though was the painting within the painting. I knew this movie would be loosey-goosey with its lore, but when I saw that, I said, God f***ing damn it. Basically, at the beginning of the movie, Sacagawea gives Nick a poster of the museum as a welcome gift, and in the end of the movie, they use that painting to get back home from Egypt before sunrise. You'd think it would make more sense for the Egypt painting to just be a portal to the past, like time travel in our own world. That way, the picture of the museum would just bring them back to our present. But even that doesn't make sense, because how do they get to the exact present? Like, the poster of the museum has to be a little bit old. Like, there's no way it was printed on the same day that Sacagawea gave it to Nick. Plus, I highly doubt that anything they did in that Egypt painting, no matter how dramatic, could change anything about our present world. So I maintain that pictures cannot allow time travel within the same universe. Let's think. It's fair to assume that all copies of the same picture lead to the same dimension. Which this actually brings me to a side tangent about something I got wrong in the first video. I said that if you painted, for instance, a cat onto a painting, it would appear within that painting or within that world when everything comes to life at night. But I don't think that's true anymore. From the inside, this cat would just appear as a dark blob that's like kind of blocking the entrance or exit of the painting. Because all copies of the same picture lead to the same dimension, we would then be implying that this cat would have to appear in every copy around the world come sunrise, which definitely is not feasible. Plus, this cat is not significant to the painting or artist in any way, shape, or form, and we've already established that the tablet will bring things to life that are significant to the space they inhabit. Now, if this photo with the painted on cat eventually gets enough recognition and becomes famous over a long period of time, it could then become significant to the painting, but it would create its own dimension, an offshoot dimension, similar to the original but with a cat. Anyway, so all photos of the sailor kissing the nurse lead to the black and white World War II New York dimension. In the same way, all copies of the Museum of Natural History poster in the fourth movie lead to the same dimension, that dimension being our dimension. Okay, but as pictures age, when do they stop existing in our dimension and start existing in a different dimension in the past? Oh, good question. I don't know the exact amount of time, but it would be a certain number of years. The ancient Egyptians had a 365-day year, pretty similar to how ours operates nowadays. So it's not a stretch to say that after 5 years, the tablet deems a picture history or dead, and it imparts its laws of existence onto that picture. Or however many years, it doesn't have to be 5. So what would happen if the gang was already in our dimension and stepped through that poster? They'd essentially just teleport outside the museum. Like a portal. Bada bing bada boom, baby. Bottom line, pictures allow you to travel from location to location in the present from within your own dimension, if the picture is less than a certain number of years old, or it lets you travel to a different dimension, whether it be past, present, or future. I hope this makes sense. There's an alternate but similar theory by my coworker Nate, who suggests that because there are infinite worlds, infinite dimensions, the tablet pairs a painting with a world that matches that painting and essentially just opens a portal. I think this theory is equally as viable, and you believe whichever one you want. I personally don't agree with it because I don't think it properly explains why the beings within the painting would go back at sunrise, especially if they weren't brought to life by the tablet. It's also too similar to the concept of the tablet bringing back the actual souls of historical figures. It's connecting to an actual world, whereas in reality, the exhibits are just representations of the historical figure and are tablet created. These worlds are tablet created. Hey, you can get stuck in a painting. No matter what, at sunrise, the doorway to the portal closes. For real people, animals, etc., essentially non-exhibits, you would not freeze. You'd be free to roam around, and the people from outside would see you roaming around. For exhibits who normally don't belong in the picture, they'd freeze. They wouldn't turn to dust because they're still in a dimension that's deeply connected to ours, and they're technically not outside, even if the content in the picture takes place outside. But it's still morning time, so they'd freeze just like if they were in our world. On the opposite end, a person who exists inside the painting would not turn to dust come morning if they were outside the painting, but still in the museum, because they're still in the main dimension that their pocket dimension is connected to, the main dimension that the tablet exists in. They would just freeze. I think it's interesting to see what a person from a stylized painting would look like in our world. Citing the Escher relativity print in the third movie, it's gotta be a mix of the style of our world and the world of the painting. Like when they jumped into relativity, they don't look like the guys in relativity, they look like themselves in a slightly warped style. So the same would go if the relativity guys jumped into our world. Could be terrifying. Could be awesome. In the same vein, you would grow or shrink to the proportion of said painting or photo, unless the artist intended their subjects to be small or large. Remember when the kid in the painting throws a snowball at Larry, but the snowball comes out small? This is because the artist intended to paint a painting of tiny people. If Larry were to step into it, he would be a giant. And I can make this claim because they created this painting specifically for the movie, so there's nobody to argue against it. Artist intent kind of matters a lot with pictures. Like generally, you wouldn't see the painter or photographer once you stepped into the picture because they exist in our world, not the world of the picture. But in something like the Arnolfini portrait by Van Eyck, he painted himself into the reflection of the mirror in the background. Allegedly. So he's in the painting, so if you went in, you would see him. I'd like to establish one last thing before we move on from pictures. The Al Capone rule. Things generally come to life as they are. The exhibits don't change much, like Jedediah and Octavius don't grow, the thinker is still made of bronze or whatever, but Al Capone. When we pass by his exhibit during the daytime, he's a cardboard cutout. But when he comes to life at night, he is a full 3D guy. From what we've seen and learned, it doesn't really track that he would go from cardboard to 3D. So that means that standees like that, whether cardboard or not, act as pictures. Like Al Capone climbed out of that picture that was printed onto the cardboard. And I will say there are 3D statues in that exhibit, but looking closely, it doesn't look like any of them are Al Capone himself. It is so silly, the extent to which I watched this scene over and over, because you can see in the background for a few frames there's a crony in color, not black and white. Somewhere it's mentioned that they weren't sure if they wanted Al Capone and his cronies to be in color or black and white, so they filmed it in color and then went back later and did all of the black and white stuff digitally. That's why some promo photos and the pictures in the book have him in color. This leaves room for error though, as we briefly see in that background shot, and also in the shot of Common-Ra waving goodbye to Darth Vader and Oscar the Grouch. Whoops. So that's the Al Capone rule. In a similar vein to picture portals, the tablet opens a gate to the underworld. It's pretty straightforward and makes a lot of sense. If the tablet can open portals and bring things back to life, it's a logical step that it could open a portal to the afterlife. But it doesn't just open a gate to the Egyptian afterlife. I'm gonna make a bold claim here, but all religious beliefs are correct in the Night at the Museum cinematic multiverse.
We try to stay a little more open-minded. Sacagawea, she honors her spiritual ancestors, and you pray to like some sort of goat god, Attila, right? I'm half Irish, half Jewish.
You don't believe in anything? Nothing's gonna happen to you when you die. You believe in heaven or hell? You're gonna go to one of those when you die. Because the tablet is from Egypt and it's made with Egyptian magic, it will always open a real portal to the real Duat no matter what. I mean, it still has to be night and everything, it still has to play by all the rules. A gate of a different religion would be a lot harder to bring to life or to open. Like, it would have to be really old and really significant to the place it's displayed in. Pictures, though? Fair game. If there's a picture of Christian heaven, it will come to life, but because it's a picture, it will still be a different dimension, not the real thing. I also think the concept of Wax, Common Ra being sent to the underworld is so interesting. I mean, does anything different happen to him because he's not real? Well, when the Horus emerge out of the gate, we see them form from this sort of dust-like stuff. And when Common Ra is pushed into the gate, we see him dissolve into this same dust-like stuff. So all beings have an essence, and once they enter the Duat, they dissolve until they are just that essence, whether it be person, animal, wax, plastic, etc. This will be important when we cover the fourth movie, Common Ra Rises Again. You can probably predict why. Also, I think you know by now that the Duat in the Night at the Museum universe is not the same thing as the Duat in Egyptian mythology. The movie is, and therefore I am, taking a lot of liberties with this. Last time we covered what kinds of things could come to life, and I briefly provided like 3 examples, so I'd like to provide a couple more that are maybe a little bit more complicated. Jedediah inhabits the main drives and personality traits of the real Jedediah Strong Smith because he is modeled after the real Jedediah Strong Smith. Loosely. Like he was made to represent him. Loosely. Those who are made to be filler, say the various soldiers in the Roman diorama or the faceless Civil War guys, they obviously come to life, but who are they if they're not modeled after someone specific? Much like with the animals, whose existence starts on the first night that they come to life, these people don't really have a backstory. If they were to look back on their past, they would have fuzzy recollections of vague happenings that resemble something that would actually happen during the time period they came from. It's a case of the tablet generalizing again, pulling in data from everywhere and forming it into one big like a randomized general name and a randomized general story that would make sense in the time period they came from. So like, could the Trojan horse come to life? Jerk reaction would be, duh, it's a horse. But we talked about artist intention with paintings, so artist intention should have an impact on everything. The Trojan horse wasn't intended to be a horse. It was intended to be a vehicle of war in the shape of a horse, so it functions as a vehicle, not an animal. But the Greeks also presented it as a gift, presented it as a statue of a horse, and it's pretty clear a statue of a horse would come to life. I'm gonna have to say yes. The Trojan horse would come to life as a horse, because though it's technically a vehicle, it's not operated as a vehicle. It can't be driven. It has to be pulled into Troy. I'm also going to cite the balloon animal from Battle of the Smithsonian. Kind of a similar deal. Also, if the Night at the Museum movies were to have a Trojan horse, they would absolutely bring it to life based on vibes alone.
I'm a vibe guy.
And it would be terrifying. A weird example would be something from an older museum where they weren't quite sure what was what yet. I say older, but really just anywhere that assembled different parts from different things incorrectly. If you have something that's an amalgamation of different parts from different things, what part comes to life? Is it the overall figure that was assembled? Is it something completely new that comes to life? Or is it each of the parts coming to life individually because they came from different things? Simply put, it would technically be a new being. Exhibits are at least mildly influenced by the public's perception of them. So, if the world generally agrees that this being exists, then it's gonna exist, at least in the museum. This being's characteristics then consist of whatever the public deems correct, and also a hodgepodge of characteristics from each of its parts. All of this mixed up and put together is enough to classify this thing as its own new being. Video games do not come to life, the same way videos don't. Everything is pre-recorded and pre-programmed. The characters do not have free will, unless it's kind of a Wreck-It Ralph situation when the game is turned off, then the characters come to life. You know, that would actually make sense, because a game being turned off is kind of similar to death. So if the game gets turned off and it's nighttime, they can kind of come to life and vibe.
I'm a vibe guy.
But then if it gets turned on, they just go back to being video game characters. Like it's their job. Another technological thing that I thought was kind of silly, no, a picture of a tablet online is not going to turn other pictures into GIFs because it's not an actual tablet with actual tablet magic, but it is a fun thought. Lastly, I want to address a few discrepancies with the lore we've already established. At the end of the second movie, Akhman Ra says,
"Parents gave me this tablet some 3,000 years ago, entrusting me with one of my people's most prized possessions."
The tablet belongs to him and his family though, so why would he refer to it as belonging to his people? Honestly, That's just Akhman-Ra being oblivious. Like, maybe the royal family, as a formality, said that the tablet belonged to everyone, or at least in the end it benefits everyone. That feels like something Morenkere would say. And Akhman-Ra just parrots that. He doesn't have to question it because it doesn't concern him. He's royalty. He doesn't have to think about these kind of things. Or he meant my people as in his family. I don't know. Remember last time when I was like, maybe the outside Teddy Roosevelt came to life in the first one and we just didn't see it. Well, we do see it this time. Outside. At night. With the tablet. And it sure doesn't move. And I don't really blame the screenwriters for their he's outside answer, because the third movie doesn't exist yet. We haven't seen things come to life outside yet. There could be a few explanations for this one. The first being that the tablet pieces may just not have been in place when they exited Amelia's plane, but when they enter the museum, when they're inside, someone flips the pieces so that everyone can come to life. The outside Teddy would also come to life, but we don't see him again, so who knows? This would be backed up by the fourth movie, Kamen-Ra Rises Again, and again, brief spoilers. We see Kamen-Ra pass by things that should come to life as he carries the tablet by them, but he actually activates them when it's convenient for him. The only explanation I can think of that is consistent with the lore is that he skews the pieces until he needs something to come to life and then quickly pushes them into place. This theory would also track because in the third movie, they say the tablet has been without moonlight for too long, and to fix it, they need to put it in moonlight and put all the pieces in place. It sure is moonlight here, so it's very likely the pieces were out of place. Another explanation for outside Teddy not coming to life is just that he's not part of the cohesive area that is the Museum of Natural History. Like, look, he's kind of far out there, so the tablet just doesn't see him as part of the museum. And as we know, if something doesn't belong to a building or cohesive area, it's not coming to life. But in any case, between all three of these reasons, we have a compelling enough answer. I previously said exhibits absorb English over time if they hadn't learned it previously, but that absorption only starts after the first night they came to life. I'm gonna have to amend that statement because Ivan, Napoleon, and the Einsteins all come out of the movie womb speaking great English. Kamen-Ra already seems to know a bunch of different languages, so we're not looking at him. We could claim that the tablet is a universal translator, which I wouldn't hate, except for the fact that we being the audience and Larry, would understand Attila from the get-go. And we in fact do not. For now, it seems the best explanation is that the exhibits absorb English even before they come to life, or it still happens after their first night, just a lot faster than originally thought. I thought the latter made more sense, only because pre-coming to life, there was no magic, so how would they absorb it? On the flip side, there's that deleted Al Capone bit where he's admiring the gangster movie, and then Levy explains that he admires those movies and only knows violence through those movies. This would also support the fact that these exhibits are not their historical counterparts, they're their own thing. But Capone would only have one night to watch, and I doubt that's what he was doing on his first night alive. So maybe he absorbed it pre-coming to life. It's fair to say that in real life, all things on Earth have an energy, whether natural or not, and that energy is affected by the things around us. So yeah, the exhibits absorbed English and other things pre-coming to life. And the last thing I want to talk about before we move on, the pictures do not come to life in the original night at the museum. I cannot blame anybody for this. The concept of moving pictures had not been thought of yet. But God, this one is really just... To be fair, we hardly see any pictures. A lot of them are shown briefly in transitions or in blurry background shots, but there's enough there to know that they seemingly don't come to life. And in the Smithsonian, Larry even says,
This is new.
We can't say that the tablet wasn't powerful enough yet, because in the third movie, we learn that the tablet is actually losing power with time. So where does this leave us? Maybe the old guards did something. Like maybe the subjects of the painting are scared, or they don't want to deal with the BS anymore, so they stay out of it. Or they don't want to deal with the BS in general of the museum. Maybe the pictures didn't feel like moving on the nights that we see them. Maybe they're just playing a little trick on Larry, I don't know. I think no matter what, they have the ability to come to life unless tampered with in some unknown way, and they just aren't for whatever reason. Let me know what you think. Well, that's the lore, folks. I'm sure we'll get even deeper in the next video, so see you then. Let's take a brief look at some fandom stuff. There's not much to discuss because we covered a lot of it in the first video, but we'll do a couple of updates, fun facts, etc. The fandom's going pretty strong. There's lots of posts and updates on Tumblr due to the fourth movie coming out. It's died out a little bit, but there's a couple of cool things going on. A one-armed Jedediah because someone saw it in a dream. A Jedtavius fanfic called Any Weather. Catgirl Octavius. But besides that, minimal. There was a Night at the Museum week on Tumblr, which was full of a bunch of amazing stuff, and you can check that out here. I did come across a TikTok on my For You page where someone talked about their Night at the Museum hyperfixation, and it had 9,000 likes and tons of comments, which No is not a lot by TikTok standards, but is plenty by Night at the Museum standards, so. Most importantly, there's a flashlight forum on candlepowerforums.com, and I couldn't not share. It's like, we've had to keep quiet about this for a long time, but the movie Night at the Museum Battle of the Smithsonian is finally out. Fans of glowink.com and CPF will truly appreciate the beginning. I just wish we got the plug that Maglite did. Like, it's got the tone of like, you guys won't believe what they have in this movie, like referring to the glow-in-the-dark flashlight. Anyway, I've been obsessed with these alignment charts too. I think they're so funny. The fandom is quite split on this movie. It's an absolute favorite for some, and it's the scum of the earth for others. It seems that the general public and casual fans tend toward loving the movie, while those that are extremely dedicated despise it. Weird how that works. I do get both sides, though in a recent Tumblr post I found, 70% of people preferred the first movie, 27% the second, and 3% the third. This could be due to the fact that not a lot of people know the third movie exists. Common complaints include the forced love interest, the slightly problematic jokes, the commercialism of it all, and the rehash of the first movie's themes. Common, loves, positives, are the wonderful cast of zany characters played by a wonderful array of beloved actors. Also, a lot of excellent bits, like Don't Cross This Line, or Brundon.
It's Brundon.
I will say, I wish the fandom talked a lot more about lore stuff. Don't get me wrong, I'll take as much Jedtavius and discourse as I can get, but I hardly see anyone discussing lore stuff, and I could really use the help. Something I forgot to mention last time, Tumblr is full of roleplay blogs. They've had a resurgence recently due to the new movie, but they were plenty popular before that. I don't have much to say on them. I'm personally not the biggest fan of roleplay blogs, but they are dedicated. But like anytime I scroll past one of those posts in the tag, it's like, all right, go off, Larry. But there is somebody roleplaying as Larry's flashlight now, and that's absolutely wild. I also imagine that these roleplay blogs are just different worlds. I know this doesn't quite fit with our established lore, but I think it would be so funny if somewhere out there, these blogs were actually just different versions of these characters. I feel like the Night at the Museum fandom will be all but dead, and those roleplay blogs will just keep on chugging. They'll be all that remains. The Night at the Museum wiki is a very unhinged place, which is pretty normal by wiki standards, but take a look at these things. As for the ships, the main one in this movie is Larry and Amelia. I mean, it's literally a major plot point. I talked a lot about the relationship earlier in the essay though, so I don't need to go into a ton of detail. I've definitely come around on this one quite a bit, but I do think there's something to be said about forced heterosexual couples taking precedence over would-be homosexual couples if the creators weren't cowards. When you look at it from a girl boss POV, Amelia's getting what she wants and is taking charge, but wouldn't it be more swag if she wasn't the love interest for the sake of being the love interest? A lot of the times when I see people ship Larry and Amelia, it's usually as part of a larger polyamorous group, specifically with Achman Ra and sometimes Lancelot, which is kind of fun, kind of cute, I don't know, I guess. I'm neutral on this one. Also, Amelia's kind of a lesbian icon, and I know this objectively does not make sense, but many people have embraced it, and I don't blame them. Look at her. There's a handful of people that ship Amelia with Sacagawea. I get it. I really, really do. We want lesbians. I think that's the main drive behind this one. Just take two strong, independent women, boom, they're lesbians. I mean, I'd prefer it over Sacagawea and Teddy, and you can't even argue that they haven't met each other because one, they have, if briefly, and two, I lived through the rise of the brave tangled dragons era, so anything is possible. You know what? Sure. Let's go for it. People who ship Achman Ra and Common Ra, I'm coming for you. Not really. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but like, it's implied Common Ra murdered Achman Ra, and also they do hate each other, and also they're brothers.
I know your brother, Achman Ra.
Achman Ra's big brother!
Oh, he knows baby brother.
Please don't look at me with that. It should also be mentioned that I rarely see this. Like, it's not common. Okay, the big one. Al Capone and Napoleon. Capoleon. I like this one, and I don't know how to justify it. Like, it's just funny. There's nothing about it that gives me the ick, and it's literally Al Capone and Napoleon Bonaparte. Like, who would've? In what other fandom? I don't actively invest my soul into them like I do Jedtavius, and I don't actively seek it out, but whenever I scroll past a post about him, I'm like, you go, girl. I haven't seen enough to know exactly what the appeal is, what makes it an appealing ship, but it might have something to do with the height dynamic, maybe the way they argue like a married couple near the end of the movie-ish. Less popular but still worth mentioning is throwing Ivan the Terrible in there to make it a throuple, which makes sense because they always appear together in the movie and they all virtually serve the same purpose in the movie. I think it's wacky, fun, why not? That's about it as far as new ships go. Obviously, Jed Tavius is still going strong, what with the whole movie existing, and more specifically, the hourglass scene. I really do think everyone involved was pushing how homosexual it could get before they just had to call it canon. Tablet Guardians, Larry and Achman-Ra, not much going on here. Achman-Ra has maybe 2 lines, but one of them's directed at Larry.
The Guardian of Brooklyn has returned.
Hey, Ak.
In canon, Teddy and Sacagawea are still going strong, and Teddy even cries when he has to say goodbye to her, so... I actually want to see more insane pairings. Please give me your most unhinged Night at the Museum pairing down below. Like, I want to stir the pot. Dawn and Ivan, Jedediah and the Thinker, Kamen-Ra and Vader, Cecil and La. Imagine. I want to mention the Night at the Museum zine. At the time of filming this video, it is no longer on sale, but I can't not share it with you. A bunch of fans came together to create this zine over the past year, and they raised a bunch of money for the UN Refugee Agency. I ordered during the leftover sale, so I didn't get to order any of the other merch, but they did send me this, and I don't think they were supposed to, so like, thank you? But if you want to check it out and see what it looks like or just find more information, you can visit their Tumblr page. Let me say, it is gorgeous. Each of the pieces is unique, and it features like all of the characters. Like there's one piece that focuses on Cecil and how the tablet was the best thing that ever happened to him, and it all came crashing down, and that one made me think for like days. I cannot emphasize how beautiful it is, and on top of that, there's a fan fiction portion that comes with it as well, called Notes at the Museum. There's 5 works. The first is called Courage from Alice. It's about Teddy Roosevelt and his daughter, and the conflicted emotions he feels about her and his family while in the museum. The next is New York's Hottest Club. Larry takes the gang out to a club where Nick is DJing, and it turns out, believe it or not, to be a horrible idea as chaos ensues. Wow. Then we have Partners, which is a Jed Tavius fic about them meeting the tiny Mayans for the first time, and Jed has insecurities and Octavius notices. Next is a Wild Night at the Museum, where Larry puts together a little Wild West night for the exhibits, and Jedediah is jazzed and Larry is stressed, as per usual. Finally, we have The Food of Love, which is another Jed Tavius fic. We follow Jedediah as he tries to make flapjacks. It's adorable. Just as with the art, all of these works are so unique in writing style and story, but they're all so good, like I physically don't think I could pick a favorite. I know it's kind of dumb to talk about this zine after the fact, like you can't buy it anymore, but I couldn't let this work go unrecognized, because not only did the artists and authors put their whole redacted into their pieces, but the team who started the process, who assembled the zines and the merch and the bundles, who handled the transactions and packaging and shipping, they worked so hard and ended up donating over $8,000. That's crazy. I know fandom in general is a hellhole full of terrible people with the most chronically online takes you've ever seen, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes you get people who really care about others and who care about their given piece of media, and I think this zine shows that. I also think we can count this as a tally. Okay, on to merch. And I mean merch in the very broad sense, because there's never good merch for these movies. This is solely personal preference, but I prefer clothing and stuffed animals as far as merch goes. And I don't feel like you can do much with clothing for these movies, unless you sell costumes, which can get very problematic very quickly. I had to make these earrings myself with my bare hands. And a thumbtack. And I will die before I buy a Dexter stuffed animal. But what are the other options? All of this is to say is let me know if you know of any good Night at the Museum merch. First we'll be talking about the video games based on the movie, and then the McDonald's Happy Meal toys. Are you even a real gamer if you haven't played Night at the Museum 2, Battle of the Smithsonian, the video game, on your Nintendo 3DS? Yeah. I didn't think so. For real though, before we start the review, I am in no way a gamer. My credentials include 100%ing some LEGO video games, casually playing Crash, Spyro, and Animal Crossing, and... no, that's it. But I gotta say, I really enjoyed this game. It's a short, repetitive platforming game where you very, very, very loosely follow the plot of the movie as Larry. The animation is something else, and I enjoyed every second of every cutscene. Essentially, you see Larry learn that the exhibits are going to the Smithsonian with the tablet, and he's like, damn, I'll miss you guys. Then we cut to Larry in bed, who gets a call from Jedediah about Common Ra. Larry travels to DC, where Common Ra comes to life and shatters the tablet, breaking it into ingots, which give people special powers, and dust particles with the magic light of Ra. Also, Napoleon, Al Capone, and Ivan the Terrible are already there, and Common Ra keeps calling Larry Son of Daly, which I think is funny. The game mechanics are really simple. You run around left and right and jump around trying to make it to the end of the level. Not every level necessarily starts on the left side of the screen and you have to make it to the right side of the screen. It's kind of all over the place, which is fun. There are bad guys everywhere, but don't worry, you've got an excellent weapon. Larry's flashlight, which vaporizes the enemies. Larry can also vaporize enemies. The game uses the word vaporize, I didn't choose it, by sliding into them when he's on a hill. Throughout the game, you pick up ingots that Common Ra shattered, each one giving you a unique power. Also, each ingot is sort of paired with a noise that matches it, which is hilarious. The first is the cloud ingot, which lets you fly a short distance, and it makes a bird noise. Then there's the moon ingot, which lets you jump up really high in a straight line really quickly. But if you have it activated while you're walking or moving around, you move really slowly. The next one is the bug ingot, which makes you shrink down and you can charge up to run really fast, though you can't hold your flashlight with this one. Then there's the bull ingot, which lets you charge through walls and also maybe enemies? I guess I didn't try that. I don't think that works. And you'll never guess it makes a bull noise. The fifth ingot is the monkey one. It lets you cling to walls and leap off of them and also climb vines. It makes a monkey noise. The last one is the elephant ingot, which makes you grow so that you can stomp on weak platforms and cause them to break, or stomp and cause tremors, which vaporizes enemies. You also can't hold your flashlight with this one either, and it makes an elephant noise. As you make your way through the museum, you collect these powers. Other things to collect include the magic dust particles that kind of act like coins in other games like Mario, like they're everywhere, and then badges and keys. There are 2 badges per level and 3 keys per level. The keys let you unlock bonus areas to collect lives, and these can be opened repeatedly, while badges unlock hidden levels. How do you find these hidden levels? On the main map, you can see a couple levels laid out in a path for you, but everything else is surrounded in black. You use the tablet dust you've been collecting to clear away the dark and reveal those hidden bonus areas and levels. Each main map room has a different theme. First is air and space, then natural history, then China, then modern art, then... Wait, what's this? An extra room with an extra ingot? Aw man, the last ingot you collect lets you travel to the underworld, which is where the final set of levels are. At the end of each room, you fight a final boss, each one harder than the last. First is Common Ra, then Napoleon, who has a horrible laugh. Then Al Capone, then Ivan the Terrible, then Common Ra again. After each boss is defeated, you get a cutscene of them being upset, and Larry teasing them, and Amelia telling them to move on. That was a long-winded explanation, but the game is fun. Again, I'm not a gamer, but I do think there's a decent challenge there, especially in the later levels. Oh my god, the one where there's a bunch of vines with moving spikes on them, I wanted to tear my hair out. Also, each of the levels has a really unique design, and they're fun to explore, especially in the modern art room. Like, it all boils down to platforming and vaporizing enemies with a flashlight, but there's enough variation in the level design to keep it interesting. And I think the badges and keys are hidden enough to make you have to replay a few levels. A weird completion counter thing is that all of the bonus levels in a room have to be completed before any of them are counted. So if there's 3 bonus levels in a room, completing 1 does nothing for your % completion. You have to beat all 3. Additionally, the badges and keys do unlock different rooms, yes, but they don't count towards your completion. You don't have to collect all of them. As long as you collect enough to unlock all of the rooms, you can reach 100%. Which is so dumb, because they set it up to make you think you need all of these things to complete the game, but you don't. And that decreases replayability, because why go back for these things if you know you don't need them? That's my only gripe, besides maybe the game being a little too short. I guess not having to collect all the keys and badges would be an interesting strategic thing for speedrunning, like which ones are a necessity. I don't know. But overall, the game is fun, the cutscenes are endearing, and it offers a good enough challenge that I couldn't completely breeze through it. Like, I was kind of sad when it ended because I wanted to play more. Lucky for me. Oh man, there's an Xbox game. I thought I'd be fine just ordering one version of the game, but it turns out the Xbox/Wii version is different from the DS version, so be careful what you wish for because mamma mia, here we go again. It's generally the same loose storyline. Common Raw splits the tablet into ingots, which give the user special powers, and he hides them throughout the museum. This time we've got voice actors to do the dialogue, so the cutscenes are longer and more frequent. Only Ben Stiller reprised his role, though. There were a few small plot differences, like Octavius is with Larry the whole time, Jedediah is thrown into a sarcophagus with a rat before promptly being rescued in a cutscene, Napoleon plans to betray Common Raw once he gets what he wants.
Once I master these weapons, I do not need you, Monsieur le Common Raw.
Etc., etc. The cutscenes, as with the DS game, are god tier. Like, why are they so funny? And why does Common Raw stand like this? And why does the polar bear sit like this? The level setup is kind of weird. The first one is in the New York Museum of Natural History, just to get you set up and work out the gameplay mechanics. Then it's the Smithsonian Castle, where you have to get a uniform and badge. Then the Federal Archives, where you get the tablet, but then everything comes to life. Then the Air and Space Museum, where you meet Amelia and Abel and climb through a vending machine as Octavius. In this version as well, Abel is a troublemaker who uses fart rocket boosts. And he looks demonic. And so does Dexter. You also fly a plane. Next, we have the Washington Art Museum. And oh boy, do I not want to get into the painting mechanics and what this means for the Night at the Museum multiverse. It's a good thing it's a video game and doesn't exist in the same universe as the movies, because that would actually make my head implode, actually. Here we have a boss fight with Ivan the Terrible, which I think is interesting because he was also the boss in the modern art room of the DS game. From there, we move on to the National Museum of Natural History, where you interact with a dinosaur, Cleopatra, who has a Jersey accent,
that old tablet again. Boring.
rhinos, and polar bears, and you get to play a trilobite minigame. The boss in this level is Al Capone, who you attack via riding Abby the dinosaur. Note that there is no boss fight with Napoleon, but you do have to fight his army twice. Then we go back to Air and Space, and then onto the Lincoln Memorial, which is the last level. After Lincoln smashes a bunch of bad guys in a cutscene, you have to fight Common Raw, which is so hard. I am so unbelievably glad that there were plenty of lives laying around, because I would have lost so many times, which I think is due in part to the maneuverability of the game, but we'll get to that later. There were more ingots in this game than the DS game, and they do different things. Whereas the DS game gave the powers directly to Larry, the Xbox game gives them to his flashlight and keychain. The keychain allows you to pull objects and swing across bars, and later, once you get the shield ingot, it can be used as a shield. The first ingot you get is the Eye of Horus, which is honestly the most useful one. When you shine your flashlight, it lets you look for hidden token points, which are kind of useless, and then it lets you know what ingot needs to be used for whatever's in front of you, then automatically switches to that ingot for you. It's helpful for when you're stupid like me and have no clue what to do next. Next is the gear ingot, which, when you point your flashlight at something, activates that thing. It's used to power broken doors, make planes fly, etc., etc. Then we have the repair ingot, which, believe it or not, repairs broken things. Then there's the paintbrush ingot, which activates painting so that you can jump through them. They often act as teleportation devices, just moving you to somewhere else in the museum, so they're not other worlds or anything. I don't want to talk about this. Then the animal ingot, which lets you control animals, including the jackal statues. And finally, the lightning ingot, which lets you strike tall metal objects with lightning, disintegrating everything that's around it. But wait, what's this? A bonus ingot? Much like the DS game, there's a surprise final ingot, though this one isn't much of a surprise. Achman Ra says,
"The Pharaoh ingot is the final piece. It grants the tablet its complete power. However, its real purpose was hidden from my brother and myself."
It's super vague, but I assume it's what allows Common Ra to open a gate to the underworld and also shoot magic beams of magic. You don't actually do anything with it when you collect it besides win the game and go home. Cleopatra says flipping the tablet over and placing the Pharaoh ingot in it will reverse the spell. What spell exactly? The underworld, I think. There's a bunch of collectibles in the game, which actually do count towards your percent completion. In almost every level, there are 4 quarters and a penny, which allows you to use a penny press that creates a cool design based on the location you're in. Like the National Museum of Natural History's penny is a dinosaur. There's also random collectibles. Like in the Air and Space Museum, you have to collect all of the pilot wings hidden throughout the level. You have to beat all of the quests, including the optional ones, win all of the awards, and listen to all of the audio tours. When you get an award, you can view it in the award room, and it will look like some sort of exhibit. And the award room actually looks identical to a real room in the Smithsonian Castle, so That's neat. I got most of everything on my first playthrough, but I had to go back to maybe half the levels to pick up a few things. The token points I mentioned earlier that can be seen with the Eye of Horus aren't essential to the game, but they do let you look at cool concept art. In the concept art, there were some videos of the characters just standing there while a narrator spouts off historical facts about them. But for characters that aren't necessarily real, like Larry, it would just be that character saying random quotes. Like Larry says,
"I am the storm." Cool. Do I level up now?
But then it got weird. Like Cleopatra speaks to us, despite Cleopatra being a real historical figure. She says,
"Beat it before I stick the jackals on you."
What? They also narrate Kamen-Ra as if he were real.
This is the pharaoh Kamun-Ra, a 4th dynasty tyrant, chiefly known for his reign of terror across Egypt.
The cavemen just make cavemen noises. No information on cavemen, and the pterodactyl just has the game's music playing. Outside of the game itself, there are a couple of mini-games: historical trivia, a trilobite puzzle game, and an Anubis statue puzzle game. While you play both the trilobite and Anubis puzzles in the game, the mini-game section has a bunch of extra levels for you to play. I'd say the game is half running around collecting things, or running from one cutscene to the next, and half puzzles. And honestly, the puzzles were kind of fun. Like the DS game, it was a little repetitive and took me a while to get into, but I had a blast. Again, I'm not a gamer, so these low-stakes games are my bread and butter. And I like puzzles. But f*** the boss level. I don't think it would be super hard if not for the controls. I think it's just the way Xbox controllers work, or maybe the way Xbox games worked back then, but Larry was kind of hard to control and position, and I couldn't jump with complete accuracy, which made platforming and aiming the flashlight hard. Because of the wonky controls, I couldn't move the obelisks in the final level very easily, and I couldn't get out of the way of attacks in time. Overall, I liked the DS game better. The controls are easier, and it had a little bit more variety. I just had more fun, I guess. And though I liked the DS game better, I think objectively most people would prefer the Xbox version. The cutscenes in both games were equally as hilarious, and the animation equally as horrifying. But I do gotta say about the Xbox version, I love me a...
Oh yeah, McPhee's note said to clear out my locker. Wow, almost forgot. I need to clear out my locker. I should do that right now.
Like, I love not doing what I'm supposed to do and then my character telling me what I should do as if I'm stupid or lost. I don't know. Also, I like the ability to play as Octavius or the dinosaurs in the Xbox version, and the game itself is a little bit more replayable. Also, Jed says ka-chow.
Victory!
Ka-chow! Like Lightning McQueen. But it's not Owen Wilson, and it just made me laugh.
Rexy?
Night at the Museum, Battle of the Smithsonian, McDonald's Happy Meal.
McDonald's toys. I cannot believe I bought all of these, but they were cheap on eBay, and I like having little trinkets to look at. Sue me. We'll just go over each one and give a quick review. They're all pretty much the same, mostly wind-up toys with matching cards, and when you insert the card, the toy takes off. Each of the cards has fun facts about the exhibit on one side and a picture of the tablet on the other. First up, we have the Easter Island head, which is the only one that speaks, and it's the one I remember getting as a kid from McDonald's back in 2009. There's no wind-up, you just turn it on, stick the card in, and he says one of two things. Classic. In the movie, he would never admit it, but the Easter Island head misses Larry when he's not around. How sweet! The real Easter Island is located in the southeastern Pacific Ocean and is part of the Polynesian Triangle. The amazing giant statues are called moai. These are 887 hand-carved statues. The largest statue weighed 83 tons. I think this one's definitely one of my favorites. The second one is about Larry and the octopus, though the card is only about Larry. You drag the toy backwards, stick in the card, and watch it go. This one's neat because it doesn't just shoot in a straight line, it kind of spins around too, so it's unpredictable. The card says, in the movie, Larry is an inventor and is famous for developing the glow-in-the-dark flashlight. The museum gives him lots of ideas and inspiration for new inventions. When Larry hears his museum friends are in trouble, he's willing to drop everything and do whatever it takes to help them. Did you know Larry can speak Capuchin? That's monkey speak for all of you. You normies don't even know what Capuchin means. That's monkey speak. This last little fact is something I wanted to bring up, which is we see what the monkeys are actually saying in only this movie. The other two movies, Larry can vaguely understand what Dexter means, but we don't get keyed into that, and also he doesn't speak Capuchin. Dexter just understands English because monkeys are smart. Only in the junior novelization do we see Larry make monkey noises. Weird. Also, sorry octopus, I guess you don't get any fun facts. But look at the way they're hugging, how cute. The third one is Rexy, my other favorite, because look how cool it looks. When you wind this one up, it walks, and it's slow and cool and mesmerizing to watch. The card says, in the movie, Rexy is really big. a really big puppy dog. He wags his tail and his favorite game is fetch. He is a Tyrannosaurus Rex and was born about 65 million years ago. Even though he lives in a museum now, back then he lived in what is now Western North America. Rexy was the largest carnivore in his environment, measuring in at 43 feet in length and 13 feet tall. The biggest T-Rex tooth found is about 12 inches long. I don't know enough about the Tyrannosaurus Rex to refute any of this, so I'll believe it. Also, I'm realizing that it's a little silly that my favorite ones are the ones that aren't in Battle of the Smithsonian very much, but hey, we are who we are. The fourth toy is Abel the Space Monkey. Same as the octopus, you drag him backwards and he takes off, but in a straight line. I don't like how human his body looks. It's slightly unsettling. But besides that, neat. The card says, in the movie, Abel is always stealing the magic tablet from Larry. No, he isn't. That's false. McDonald's, this is not true. Sure, he does that in the script and novelization, but not in the movies, baby. You have him confused for Dexter. Dexter loves stealing the tablet. Abel's a good monkey, so jot that one down. In 1959, a rhesus monkey named Abel was launched from Cape Canaveral, Florida, 300 miles into space. I learned a fun fact about this in the screenwriter's commentary, which is the Abel exhibit in real life is, not fun to look at. It's certainly not for kids. It's, at speeds of up to 10,000 miles per hour, the flight took 15 minutes. Can you imagine what Abel must have been thinking during this high-speed adventure? I can't. I can't, actually. The fifth one is Octavius and the Squirrel, though the card is only about Octavius. Another wind-up toy, but once you let it go, it hops across the floor. I like the lack of color in Octavius's armor and also the look on his face. Look how smug he looks. The card says, in the movie, the Roman soldier Octavius battles a squirrel. The strip on top of a soldier's helmet was often made of real horsehair. Back in ancient Rome, the average size of a group of soldiers in the Roman legion was somewhere between 4,200 and 5,200 men. That's a lot of soldiers for Octavius to keep in step with. Weird, there's also a fourth fact that the camera's just not picking up. It says Octavius is gay and is in love with his cowboy boyfriend. His boyfriend Jedediah. Huh. Well, since you can't see it, you're just gonna have to believe me. The sixth one is Amelia Earhart in her plane. Same concept, drag it back, stick the card in, watch it fly. The card has her birthday and the day she went missing, and it says, in the movie, after Larry speeds up to Amelia on a motorcycle, she asks, "What's the rumpus, Ace?" So true. Amelia Earhart was a famous American aviation pioneer. For her solo flight across the Atlantic Ocean, Amelia became the first woman to receive the Distinguished Flying Cross Medal. Earhart mysteriously disappeared over the Central Pacific Ocean in 1937. Even today, nobody knows what really happened to her. I mean, nobody really knows, but there's plenty of agreed upon theories out there, the most prominent being she ran out of fuel and crashed in the ocean and died. Neat toy though. Number 7 is just a normal Albert Einstein toy until you stick the card in and then it becomes a bobblehead. Because how could they not? The card has the days he was born and died, and it says, in the movie, the Einstein bobblehead helps Larry unlock the mystery of the tablet. The real Albert Einstein was born in Germany and is best known for his theory of relativity, E equals mc squared. Did you know that Albert Einstein received the Nobel Prize in Physics? That's a really big deal. The last one is General Custer on his motorbike. Same as with most of them, drag it back, put the card in, it takes off. I will say, I think this one moves the best and is the fastest out of all of them. So, General Custer, at least you got that going for you. Your 2009 McDonald's toy, based off of Bill Hader's impression of you, is the fastest and smoothest toy in the set. This card also has his birth and death days, and it says, in the movie, Custer's battle strategy is, I will proudly announce we are not going to attack. And then, we will attack. Any questions? Ever hear of Custer's Last Stand? It was named after George Armstrong Custer, who led his troops into battle at Little Bighorn in 1876. If you go to Bighorn County in Montana, you can visit the Little Bighorn Battlefield National Monument. And that is all of the toys. Just kidding. Look at this Napoleon Bonaparte McDonald's toy that I just got, because it's from Europe and not in America. I think he's supposed to fling off of his horse when you put the card in, but I think mine might be broken, though I'm not super bummed because it's just going to sit on my shelf. The card says, Napoleon, known as the Little Corporal, was a great military leader who led his armies through many winning battles. In 1806, Napoleon specially built the Arc de Triomphe in Paris to celebrate his success in battle. It is one of the biggest triumphal arches in the world, standing 50 meters tall. You would have to climb 284 steps to reach the top. Insert this card and watch Napoleon jump off of his horse. What the f*** is a meter?
And that is all of the toys.
Each of them also came with a code for McWorld, which no longer works because McWorld no longer exists, so If anyone knows what these things do, please let me know. The closest I came to finding anything was this, and I don't think this is correct. Also, let me know what I should do with these cards because I want to do something cool with them. If worse comes to worse, I'll just tape them to my wall, but you know, the toys are cool. All pretty much the same wind-up toy thing, but I'm not expecting much else from McDonald's. I'm just happy they did the Albert Einstein bobblehead, and now I have little trinkets to look at on my little shelf and it gives me little bites of serotonin. The themes in this movie are mostly covered through the characters, especially Larry, Amelia, and Custer, so I don't have too much to say in this section. I would actually like to start out with our smaller, more inconsequential theme before I move on to the bigger stuff. So, technology is evil. This theme is not present in most versions of the movie, like the script in the book, but in the finished product itself, it's fairly obvious. We see it in the way the new holograms in the museum are vilified.
Blah, blah, blah. History, history, learning, learning. Changing America one child at a time.
All of our beloved exhibits are being shipped off, and while I do agree that it's sad and that we should preserve museum artifacts, I also think holograms are much more accessible. Accessibility in museums is an important issue that I don't really have time to get into, but technology isn't always bad just because you don't like seeing someone on their phone in a museum. But that is besides the point. These holograms represent a massive shift toward what's new, what's next. We also see this theme a lot through Larry. He's addicted to his BlackBerry, whatever the heck his cell phone PDA thing is. He repeatedly motions for the exhibits to wait a sec while he answers texts, and Jedediah teases him for it, saying stuff like,
"Maybe the answer's on that magic buzzing box there in your hand."
Or the way everyone looks mildly uncomfortable while they wait for him to finish his text. Or Teddy looking vaguely disappointed. Or how Larry could have learned the key to happiness from the literal 26th president of the United States, but he was too busy with his phone. Or the absolute disturbing nature of the soundstage that Larry's on in the beginning. He's advertising seemingly innovative but ultimately useless new products in front of a live audience on a lifeless stage, being interviewed by a celebrity and having it broadcast on a television station nobody's going to watch. The way everyone laughs at the "you mean a regular Larry" joke feels like something out of a dystopian novel.
You mean a regular Larry?
And though this isn't technically bad, we see Nick navigate a super advanced map on the Smithsonian website, all 2009 high-tech looking. But either way, the bottom line is that technology is evolving. Fast. Upon my first few watches of the movie, that's how it came off. But it kind of makes sense. This is 2009. In the past 20 years, we've seen technology grow at an unbelievable rate. In my extremely limited research and my even more extremely limited memory, smartphones were just becoming a thing and social media was really taking off. Advanced tech was new and exciting, and just like every other time advanced tech was new and exciting, it made people nervous. Nervous about privacy and security and the brains of our children. It would make sense that there's a reaction against new tech, and that reaction would be reflected in the media we consume, like TV and movies. So I see where Night at the Museum 2 Here We Go Again is coming from. And I may get heat for this, but I kind of agree a little bit. Night at the Museum could not have possibly predicted the hellscape that exists today. They were reacting to what was currently happening. But I think if the people of 2009 saw what today looked like, I think they'd have an aneurysm. Because I do feel my brain cells dying a little bit. I do feel my attention span shrinking, and I do think the endless amounts of information and news and scrolling is making me feel like Dookie. Making me feel like Dookie. Like Dookie. Both mentally and physically. Nothing about my phone makes me feel good in any way. Talking to friends, being in the moment, engaging with activities I love, that makes me feel good. Like a plus sign just appeared above my head, and I hate to admit it. So maybe that's what the movie was getting at. Obviously, it was reflecting the public's fears of ever-growing technology, but maybe it was also saying technology is cool and helpful, and it connects you to Walmart to pitch your new inventions, and it allows for interactive exhibits, but it doesn't compare to doing what you love with people you love.
It's doing what you love, isn't it? With people you love.
Greatness. The lengths to which we discussed this in the last video, I cannot get into it again. But essentially, in the first movie, Larry unlearns the concept of greatness and learns what makes him great, namely being the best Larry Daly he can be. Through this, he's able to make a name for himself in the product design world. So I don't think he ever forgets this lesson. He's still the same Larry Daly we see at the end of the first movie, just in different circumstances. He doesn't ungrate himself, but he does lose something else in the process. he loses motivation and happiness. He loses direction. Because you can be great your whole life and never be happy. And I'm just gonna get right down to it. A big reason for this is capitalism. While Larry was wrestling with his internal demons over his situation in life, there was also a ton of external pressure because we are a money-based society and nothing is going to change that anytime soon. And this new job he has is bringing in the money. When Nikki complains about Larry having to work a boring, uneventful job every night when he used to have the coolest job ever, Larry retorts with,
Yeah, well, cool doesn't pay for your Guitar God 6 or whatever.
in the novelization, he says, cool doesn't pay for this apartment or your school. Like Larry's just trying to create a comfortable life for himself. Like not even incredibly fancy, just comfortable. And the amount of personal sacrifice he has to make just to be comfortable is insane. You can either pick success and comfortability or happiness. But here's the kicker, there's an immense guilt that comes along with picking either side. Larry can have fun and be with his friends in the museum his whole life, doing what he loves, but he'd have to live modestly, not able to provide a whole lot for Nikki or even himself. Or he can make the money, set up a really good life for himself and his family, but abandon all of his friends and his job. In the novelization, McPhee throws this guilt in Larry's face, calling him Mr. I'm too good for $11.50 an hour.
This is not worth $11.50 an hour.
Like, yeah, you're gonna make him feel guilty over not accepting less than desirable pay for a very involved job, while you make how much as a museum director? Okay. This sad, cold, harsh reality that the movie presents is not dissimilar to the first movie. I mentioned in the last video that most children's movies have the follow your dreams theme, but Night at the Museum says actually take responsibility and be the best version of yourself. It's kind of a reality check. Same with this movie. We tend to praise characters who make the most of themselves and maintain a lucrative career doing something they love, which, yeah, makes sense, like good for that character. And this is reflected in movies and TV. But not Night at the Museum 2 Chamber of the Secrets, no. This movie says doing what you love is cool, but unfortunately, capitalism forces you to monetize doing what you love, monetize your hobbies to the point that you can no longer love them. And that sucks. It's here where we feel that greatness and happiness are at odds. One or the other. You pick greatness versus happiness, Teddy versus Amelia, Obi-Wan Gandalf hybrid versus 1930s manic pixie dream girl fight to the death, go. But there is a hefty intersection that Larry's able to find by the end of the movie. Like I said, he never stopped being great, but he lost his moxie.
But what I see in front of me is a man who's lost his moxie.
When he finds his moxie, realizing it was with the Museum of Natural History all along, he also finds his worth. He creates a position for himself, head of the night program, which comes with a nice pay raise. The external pressure from the world around him, Larry satiates that with a fancy title and a fat paycheck, but he gets to continue doing what he loves with people he loves.
It's doing what you love, isn't it? With people you love.
That's what really matters. That's the part he cares about. He was able to find a way to mix greatness and happiness. We talked about legacy in the last movie, but that was the good side of it. Larry's legacy. The way in which being remembered on a really small scale and making a difference in people's lives is actually a good thing. This movie deals with the bad aspects of legacy. We see it through Amelia, Custer, the three villains, and even Common Raw a little bit. They are remembered for their failures, and Larry was about to be as well. His legacy was going to be the glow-in-the-dark flashlight, or even worse, the inevitable inability to create the next big thing as the world moves on. His failure to stick anything through. Like, is the glow-in-the-dark flashlight what he really wants people to think about when they think about his name? No. He wants them to think of his leadership, compassion, perseverance, and creativity. He wants them to think of a friend. That's about all I've got as far as themes go. Again, most of it was covered in the character analyses, and yeah, Night at the Museum 2's bogus journey kind of contradicts the first one. Like, Larry seems to be relearning the same lessons, and after we spent all this time unlearning greatness and making the museum feel like home, he quits and does business things, and we have to start from the beginning. But upon closer inspection, as we learned, this isn't true. We know life has ups and downs, and personal progress isn't linear, and sometimes we have to try our dreams before we completely dismiss them. We have to teach ourselves that it's okay to be happy, and we have to let ourselves be happy, because if we were able to free ourselves of this capitalist way of living, happiness wouldn't contradict success. Maybe we can find a way to have it all. Starting with the awful news. There was a wonderful Night at the Museum Lego set on Lego Ideas. It made it to 10,000 supporters, it got to the review stage with 50 other Lego sets, but in the end, it got denied in favor of a Nightmare Before Christmas set and a phone booth set. Major bummer, but go support this awesome creator because he has a bunch of other cool, insane sets. Also, I couldn't live without these little guys, so I went and bought my own trophy figs and painted them, and they look Fine. Now on to the excellent news, my friends. At the time of writing this, the Night at the Museum musical had its first workshop, and it was reportedly a success. While Alan Menken is doing the music, Sean Levy is actually doing the script, so the songs, the story, it's all there. It's supposedly a couple years out, and oh boy am I jazzed. Additionally, Night at the Museum 4, Kamen Rises Again came out on Disney Plus to very mixed reviews. I won't get too into it now because I do plan to do a short video on the movie after I finish the original trilogy. I think overall it was a good movie that had excellent animation and it held the original spirit of the live action trilogy, but it was a bad movie for extremely dedicated fans, and an especially bad movie for consistency and my lore. As expected. It's rumored that this is a jumping off point for a television series, which I hope is true, because it really felt like the movie was a setup for something more, but no official word. Besides that, there's no news. I mean, honestly, I'm excited to have any news in the year of our Lord 2023, so I'm counting it as a win. God, I am so excited for this musical. Why are Jedediah and Octavius tall on the DVD cover? On the movie poster? It makes me uncomfortable. But for real though, before I share my own thoughts, I would love to share my mother's. She despises General Custer, like despises him, and rightfully so, but I simply can't tell if it's due in part to Bill Hader. Like, it's very unclear as to whether she loves him or hates him. She hates his slanted hat, it's too slanted, and his mustache. His boots suck ass, they're like moon boots. Again, his hat makes him look unattractable and untrustable. She said, "It's the hat. It's the stupid hat that I hate the most, besides the fact that it's Bill Hader, who I didn't like in SNL." When I asked if there was anything else, she said, "Stupid red bib, but that has nothing to do with his stupid boots. I hate Bill Hader. Don't put that in. Look at him. I'm serious. Look at him. He looks stupid. Look at his hands. Don't include that. Just play the video. Look at his hands, though." But then later she said Bill Hader did a good job, so... Also, I told her that it was Bill Hader, and she didn't believe me until she saw his teeth. She recognized Bill Hader by his teeth. She hated that Al Capone was in black and white, but shortly after she said she wished she could be in black and white. Whatever that means. She was deeply disturbed by Ben Stiller's long curly hair and his right eyebrow in a behind-the-scenes interview. She also said she didn't like his hands or the fact that his pants were too long. She didn't like Amelia's accent, though she loves Amy Adams. And about Sean Levy, she said, "I don't like the curly-haired dude. Not overall, just in this picture, but he's probably a great director, I just don't like him in this shot." But what did my mom like about the movie? Ricky Gervais and Hank Azaria, for one. For two, the Jonas Brothers cherubs. Her favorite part of the movie was when Amelia said,
"Please stop beating your gums, Mr. Daly. You haven't been able to take your cheaters off my chassis since the moment we met."
And Larry says,
I literally didn't understand one word of that.
Her second favorite part was the "were you guys like friends in college" bit. Like, she made me replay it twice. Though upon another viewing of the movie, she said her favorite part was when Kamen Ra tried to open the gate, but his parents changed the combination. When I said really, she said, maybe. So, she died when Jedediah called Kamen Ra ramen noodle.
Look a little nervous there, ramen noodle.
And when she saw the wings on the Jonas Brothers in Cherub Boot Camp. So my mom's final thoughts on Night at the Museum 2 Fury Road are, didn't actually totally suck. It was good kinda. It had its points and, sure, it was an okay movie. Watch it, you might like it. There you have it, folks. Now for my more coherent, but probably more annoying thoughts. First, I have a headcanon that either McPhee is immortal and he's been running the museum for a very long time, or his family has been running the museum for a very long time, except they all look like him. Like, they'd all just be Ricky Gervais. This has no backing except for the fact that I'm the lore god and I think it's funny. Second, I want to see what happened the first night the exhibits came to life in the Smithsonian. Like, give me that short film. Third, I want to see the conversation between Akhman Ra and the New York exhibits when they get back. Like, hey, we met your brother. What the f***? This is me just saying that I want confirmation, nay, need confirmation that Kamen Ra is real and Akhman Ra acknowledges his existence. Anyway, this movie is gorgeous. The first one is too, don't get me wrong. They're both bright and vivid and warm, and it just creates this feeling of like home. Maybe that's why I like watching these movies time and time again. Like, they're just nice to look at. I have a thing against dark scenes because all you can see is the reflection of your face in the screen unless you're in a pitch black room, and these movies are so good at their dark scenes not actually being too dark. Cinematography, my ass. Night at the Museum 1 and 2 are stunning. Especially 2. Like, look at this. Also, the effects. I'm not sure if I mentioned this last time, but for 2006 and 2009, the visual effects are insane. I really do forget that there is not a giant T-Rex or octopus on the screen. I'm glad the studio let them do their thing and that everyone involved wanted to make a good movie because it certainly paid off in that department. As I mentioned, Battle of the Smithsonian has some of the best and some of the worst jokes in the trilogy. Some of the worst.
No, it's because I've got this ancient race from the dead evil pharaoh guy who's willing to kill me and probably anyone near me to get this tablet so we can rule the world.
So it is because I'm a woman.
And
You.
some of the best.
Were you guys like friends in college and just afraid now to both ruin your relationship by telling the other person that you want to be more than friends, that you like each other?
And
Splendid.
a style of humor that was popular at the time was, I don't know how to put it, like meta, I guess. Meta jokes? I think they're still funny if done correctly, but a lot of them just haven't really aged well. And this movie kind of fell victim to that in two specific scenes. The first was when Larry asked Octavius,
Would you please not look dramatically off into the middle distance when you say that? It makes me feel worse.
Octavius's reaction is funny,
Just a bit of wall.
but the joke as a whole feels like it would have landed very well from like 2008 to 2016. The other instance is when Lincoln defeats the Bird Warriors and Common Raw says,
Well, this is awkward.
maybe I'm just being picky and annoying, but the Night at the Museum trilogy is already so naturally funny without trying. The characters' personalities are wacky and engaging all on their own, so when a joke is forced, you can tell. It feels out of place. It's still a good movie though, it still holds the spirit and heart of the original. There's still a strong, well-rounded theme, if a bit generic, and the characters still feel the same. They act the same as they did before. And I love the balance of old and new friends. Though I would have loved to see old characters just a smidge more, especially Sacagawea, Attila, and Akhman Ra, who notably are characters of color. We definitely got a good enough amount of content to be satisfied with their presence and continue their character arcs, but we also got to know new characters intimately. They didn't feel shoved in and quickly glossed over, despite the fact that we'd probably never visit them again. Like, they still feel like they mattered. In addition to the expansion of cast and characters, the tablet's powers get expanded too. And it's a good expansion because it feels like a natural progression. Whereas the third and fourth movie get a little wacky, having the tablet open a gate to the underworld feels like the right next step. It's connected to death already, like it brings dead people back to life, so having it open a gate to the afterlife makes sense. One of the reasons this movie's tone felt slightly different was because it's very dialogue heavy or dialogue reliant. They hinted to this in the behind the scenes feature, where Ben Stiller said filming Night at the Museum 2, This Time It's Personal, was a lot less lonely. He got to talk to a lot of people this time around. He wasn't running around all by himself. I don't think this is a good or bad thing. I love me lots of dialogue. I have a short attention span and I live for the bit, but I can see how others would find this less appealing. Listen. Maybe it's because I was the age I was at the time the movie came out, maybe it's the era that the movie came out in, or maybe it's just true, but this movie felt super commercial. Again, this is coming from my biased perspective as an 8-year-old, and it's not like the first movie wasn't commercial, but just looking at this essay, we've got so much more to go through. Video games, McDonald's toys, like this thing was everywhere. It was marketed. It's really hard to describe the specific feeling, and I don't want to say you had to be there, but it's a you had to be there moment. It was an era of marketing to kids and selling to kids. It was the era of Disney Channel and stuff of that sort. It's just a vibe, man.
I'm a vibe guy.
And you can feel that commercialism just a bit in the movie because of that expansion, because of the slightly less convincing theme, because of the trailer shots that Sean Levy said he can smell. Something about the cast being full of people from The Office adds to that commercial feeling, and I don't know how to explain it. Like, The Office was in peak popularity, I assume, what with it being in season 5, and now we've got cameos from Ed Helms, Mindy Kaling, Chris Robinson. And they're excellent comedians and actors, don't get me wrong, but something about it is just... And I think this level of commercialism is weird, considering one of the main themes is technology bad. The message of this movie is very anti-whatever the marketing people were doing for the movie. It's a weird contrast that makes me feel a little uncomfy. Because of this, though, the second movie feels like it is the one that is cemented the most in the public consciousness. It's the one that everyone remembers when you mention Night at the Museum, especially for my generation.
Firepower!
I think our distrust of commercialism is good and very valid, but I've been trying to shake myself of that feeling because sometimes commercial things are fun and good. Commercialism as a whole is bad, but allowing myself to enjoy things, even if they're mainstream or cash grabby, and I'm not saying this movie is cash grabby, It's just made me a happier person. I don't know, maybe I'm the problem. Like, the system doesn't care if I'm self-aware. Whether I'm self-aware or not, I'm still spending money and playing into the system. I don't know, sue me. This attitude I'm trying to adopt allowed me to look past my initial cynicism for this movie in particular and just laugh and have a good time. It allowed me to fall in love with it all over again. Lastly, I briefly want to, nay, need to mention Ed Helms in the Night at the Museum cinematic universe. If you recall from the last video, Ed Helms plays an inventor/dentist in the first movie in a deleted scene only. In the second movie, he plays Larry's assistant, Ed. Are they the same character? Are they twins? Relation? No relation? So I messaged Ed Helms on Instagram and I got no response. So I'm going through my very limited contacts to see if anyone could get me in contact with him, but so far no luck. I'm not giving up though. For now, I maintain that they are all the same character. It has to be. Ed Helms is excellent at playing Ed Helms.
You're the vibe guy.
So these characters pretty much act the exact same. They also both wear glasses, but more importantly, they act similar. Listen, I really want to say Night at the Museum 2, Ralph Breaks the Internet is worse than the original. It's not a bad movie in any way. Same way Amazing Spider-Man 2 is the worst Spider-Man movie, but there's no bad Spider-Man movie. But the more I studied and analyzed this movie, the more it really grew on me. Above all else, it's fun. It's incredibly unhinged.
I was dead, but now I have come back to life!
Yeah, no, I heard that. I got that. Welcome back.
Who are you?
It's by far the funniest Night at the Museum movie. I also think there's some really genuine, sweet moments, especially between Larry and Amelia, even disregarding the romantic part of their relationship.
And I have a feeling it's going to be a beautiful sunrise. Have fun.
The villain is incredibly compelling. Just as with the movie itself, Common Raw really grew on me the more I watched him and worked on this essay. Like a lot. I'm always hesitant about magic villains, especially when we had excellent non-magic villains as our first movie antagonists, but Common Raw is truly scary and evil. Like the way he clearly doesn't consider Octavius or Jedediah real people, and the way he literally dangles Jed's life in front of Larry, the terrifying bird warriors he has as backup. It's also nice to get right to the exhibits coming to life in this movie. We don't have to wait to learn the lore or wait to see our friends, they just come to life right away, and it's nice. And okay, while Custer and Amelia are awesome characters when you dig deep, I had to reach kinda far to justify their awesomeness, which is fine, I'm glad I did, but the casual viewer is not gonna do that. In the same vein, the themes are deeper than they appear at first glance, but again, I had to reach a little to make them feel new and genuine. I wouldn't say the movie falls quite into the cash grab sequel trap, even if it was a cash grab because the studio clearly recognized its cash grab potential after the success of the first. Because it does have a good plot and characters and kind of theme, but in the end, I have to say the first one is better. I just don't think anything can compare to the heart and magic of the original Night at the Museum. But that doesn't mean we're not gonna have a marvelous time with the second one. Here we are, back at it again with another conclusion, so bye. But for real, thank you. Thank you for watching even a little bit of this. Thank you if you watched both videos. Thank you to all of these people who continue to put up with, and dare I say, Aegon, my ramblings after months of me saying, I'll be over this soon, I promise. If you happen to be Sean Levy, Ben Stiller, Ed Helms, or pretty much anyone who worked on any of these movies, please shoot me a message because I have a couple of questions for you, like no more than 5 questions, I promise. I just want to say my love for this series is ever growing the more I explore it and dive into it, so I am still full of energy. I can wear myself out with obsessions if I go too hard too fast, so the fact that I'm still not sick of this trilogy is a testament to how great it is. Like, I am so ready to hop into Night at the Museum 3 Secret of the Tomb. I will forewarn you that there is no cross-country trip in a big rig, there is no Shania Twain, but I promise you it is excellent nonetheless. We'll see you then.
Hope for your little friend's sake, Hera, that you also figured out the combination. Give me Jed. Oh, no. First, give me the combination. Hand over that tablet. I'll give you the tablet and the combination when you release my friends and give him back to me. I shall release what I want to release, the moment I want to release it. Great, and I will release it. I want to release it the exact moment that I want to release it. Okay? Tell me the combination and give me that tablet right now, or I shall kill all of your friends, starting with the little shaggy-headed little Calvin here. I ain't shaggy-headed. Gargantuan, let me take this guy. Don't worry about this handling. You want to give me my friends? Then you're not going to get your combination in your tablet? All right. I'll tell you what, alright, they didn't call me Common Ra the Trustworthy for nothing. Here you go. They didn't call me Common Ra the Trustworthy, they call me Common Ra the Bloodthirsty, who kills whoever doesn't give Common Ra exactly what he wants in the moment that he wants it, which is right now, when I had also better get the combination and the tablet. That's what they called you? It was short for an Egyptian. Great, well I give the combination after you. How dare you? If you touch that again, I shall kill you right now. Do not touch this. This is a no touching zone. Good, well then, oh my god. I can't believe you reached across like that again. I can't even believe it. Oh god, I want to kill you right. If you didn't know this combination, you'd be so dead right now. It would be unbelievable. Great, but I do know the combination. Don't cross this line with your hand. How dare you? Don't speak. If you speak again, I'm going to kill you. Do you understand this? Don't say anything. Oh god, I see you getting ready. Oh my god, don't say anything. I shall murder you if you talk again. Now give me that tablet and tell me the combination. Okay, after you give me Jed and release my friends. You did all three. You spoke and you reached your hand across. Look, I can talk to you about this all night. Okay, how about this? How about I don't kill you right now like I really, really want to, and I give you precisely 5 seconds to give me that tablet and tell me the combination. We already got the combination. It's pie.